OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
7:30 on this Thursday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. Eoin and Sheahan with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And as you can imagine, we've got plenty of Champions League. We've got our final build-up to the TheMasters. We've even got an interview with Connacht head coach Andy Friend. However, today was due to be the day that the GAA introduced their revised roadmap for the return to play, the safe return to play of all activity. They might have been waking up yesterday morning, planning today, thinking, God, we've dodged a bullet to a certain extent with the Dublin situation 1 week ago, that there wasn't a whole pile of political pressure or political outrage about the photos emerging from Inish Falls GAA club, and we can get on with things. But the Irish Independent this morning might have changed that. On the front and on the back of the newspaper, they are reporting about a latest breach from an inter-county squad. It is Monaghan, allegedly this time. Garda probe into video of Monaghan GAA training session is the front of the Independent, and the back page is GAA vow to investigate claims of Farney breach. So Minister for Justice Helen McEntee was sent photos and videos allegedly of a training session taking place at the end of March before the Dublin training session, and involving more players in the Dublin training session. 25 players and coaching people in total. So it's a bigger group. It happened before Dublin, and it happened at Corduff GAA Club, according to the allegations that are reported this morning. Shane Hannon of Monaghan joins us this morning. Are you shocked and appalled by what your county men have done to the roadmap, Shane?
Morning, Eoin. Yeah, it's a strange one. Look, it's when you see headlines like this, it's embarrassing. You look at your own county's day-by-day COVID figures, and Monaghan have been doing quite well in recent weeks, having been one of the worst counties affected. So you take a little bit of pride when you see your county doing quite well and helping to do their part. But when you see your county involved in something like this, it's a bit embarrassing, and it's frustrating, I think, as well for I guess the other GAA counties and clubs maybe who are taking this seriously and who are genuinely not training at the moment. So to see this headline is a bit frustrating today. And look, it was never going to be the Monaghan GAA Centre of Excellence that these lads were training at. That's just off the N2. And it's actually being used as a COVID testing centre here in Monaghan at the moment. But yeah, Corduff Gales is kind of this hidden little hamlet close to Carrickmacross in South Monaghan. And this alleged breach that has been brought to the attention of the Minister for Justice is just going to set the GAA's return back. I mean, the April 19th has been mentioned. Larry McCarthy was on Red FM a number of days ago, and he was asked, I think, by Valerie Wheeler, what would another breach mean? And he said, well, it just would not be good. And I guess the general consensus is that another breach would lead to perhaps a delay to the April 19th return. So this is bad news generally.
The April 19th return, according to Monaghan GAA Chairman Declan Flanagan, is something that they have abided by. Now, he's come out and said the whole thing is news to me, and that the county had been holding fast before that April 19th return date. The Independent actually carry a statement from him, basically denying it really, and denying any knowledge of this happening. He said, if it is of a Monaghan training session, I'm not aware of it, because we have been holding fast and going back to training. The Monaghan County Board have, and as far as I'm concerned, Monaghan GAA are not doing any training. And I'll tell you, there is very little activity on any pitch in Monaghan. So he's basically coming out and almost going as far as denying these. And we should say that they are allegations. We don't have photographic proof published in a national newspaper this morning, but it's undoubtedly a massive story here, Shane. And if there is photographic proof, maybe this explodes into something bigger if it's out in the public domain. But there's no guarantee that happens, because this is being investigated privately. They're in the hands of the Gardaí at this point. According to the piece, that's where Helen McEntee has passed the photos and video footage on. She received a dossier and it's gone to the Gardaí. They'll be investigating this on a number of different levels. The 5-kilometre rule breach, as much as some people will disagree with that entire rule, does that come into fines that will be handed down to Monaghan? These are things that will have to be seen. Overall, again, the same thing goes to this time last week, which is the act of people training in a pitch maybe isn't that egregious. It's just the fact that GAA people feel that they don't need to abide by the rules sometimes, and that is the image problem that I felt would become a massive problem as a result of Dublin last week. And to be honest with you, I think that they actually not got by unharmed or unscathed from it, but I was certainly confident that the revised roadmap that was going to be rolled out today was going to be a little bit undisturbed by what had happened last week. However, another story coming out on the day of this roadmap coming out, I think that puts the brakes on it a little bit, or it has a chance of putting the brakes on it a little bit, which would be hugely disappointing for everyone.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to be very interested to see the reaction to this story today. A lot of people are upset that outdoor sport hasn't started in the country yet. But having said that, the numbers involved here in this alleged breach is that it's actually more than 25 people, according to the report, whether that's players, coaches, whatever. If it emerges that this was an organised Monaghan training session organised by the manager, Seamus McEnany, then they need to come down hard. Monaghan GAA need to come down very hard on him. Dublin set the precedent here with a 12-week ban for Dessie Farrell. So if it's proven that this was the case and the video and images of this training session are corroborated, then 100% Seamus McEnany needs to be banned for 3 months at a minimum, because this is an embarrassing breach, and it's something that a lot of people are talking about social solidarity at the moment. That seems to be one of the couple of the buzzwords going around, and this is a slap in the face to it. This is the impact this is going to have on people. It's not the fact that Monaghan GAA allegedly had a training session. It's that other people are going to look on and go, well, if those lads are training, why can't I meet 3 or 4 of my mates? Do you know? That's the impact that I'm worried about. That's the impact that I was worried about after the Dublin GAA story. Do you know, we're in the camera phone age, Eoin, and for any county to think that there wasn't a strong chance that they'd be caught training, especially with a group of more than 25, that's a bit ridiculous. They're always going to get caught. There's always going to be someone. And look, it's Kickoff GAA pitch. It's Seamus McEnany's home club, as everyone knows. So this is a story that was undoubtedly going to come out, and the GAA are going to be absolutely fuming this morning. And to see Declan Flanagan's comments from Monaghan GAA, one of his quotes was, "I'll tell you, there is very little activity on any pitch in Monaghan." Well, the point is, Declan, there's supposed to be no activity on any pitch in Monaghan. So there needs to be a strong and immediate response from the GAA. There needs to be a strong and immediate response from Monaghan GAA as well. It was Dublin that slapped the 12-week ban on Dessie Farrell. That was for 9 players meeting up. This is an organised session, it appears, allegedly, of more than 25 people. So maybe it needs to be more than a 12-week ban for Seamus McEnany for this message to be hammered home to other counties. So I think they need to come down hard and fast on Monaghan. This needs to be punished, and it needs to be punished quick. They're
still investigating the Dublin situation, and I wonder, does this complicate that investigation a little bit? Because while the Dublin situation is maybe a bigger story because of the fact that they're possibly the most famous bunch of Gaelic footballers to have ever laced boots, this is arguably, if the allegations are true, to be a worse story than Dublin with 25 players. Just optics-wise, it looks worse. There was the phrase, the Dublin situation was only lads kicking a ball around a park. I think I used that phrase myself last week, which you can get by with now. In fairness, there was a trainer with them. You can't really say it's lads kicking around a ball in a park when they've got an actual coach with them, and it's very organised. So that was probably a little bit of a lackadaisical term on my part to kind of throw that around. But you can't really say that about more than 25 players / management at a GAA park in this case.
No, I can tell you for a fact that 25 members of the Monaghan senior panel do not live within 5 kilometres of Carduff. 25 people live within 5 kilometres of Carduff. But it's one of those incidents. Like, I remember reading an interview with Seamus McEnany. I think it was towards the middle of February, and look, he was I guess, speaking his frustration and venting his frustration at the fact that GAA wasn't returning quicker than he hoped, and he's probably looking on at the league, the upcoming league. Monaghan were due to be in a group with Donegal, Tyrone and Armagh. He probably is fully aware that Tyrone and Armagh situation is different. The vaccine situation in the north is rolling out much faster than here, as we know. So he probably wanted to get a march on those teams and have the Monaghan players conditioned right, but there's no excuse for it. Players can get conditioned by themselves. The situation is the same for all other counties in the Republic of Ireland, and it's one of those situations where you just have to be patient. I'm sure there are a lot of other counties being patient. Eamon Fitzmaurice was quoted on the Irish Examiner podcast, as we spoke about earlier during the week, that he thinks that he's fairly sure Kerry haven't returned, as one example, to training. So counties need to be patient here. They need to hold firm. And according to this report in the Irish Independent this morning, allegedly Monaghan haven't been holding firm. So this response needs to be fast, Owen. And it's just, you can understand frustration of managers. They want to get out with their players. They're sick of the Zoom sessions. They're sick of these, sending them their individual, regimes that they have to complete and send back by video or whatever. We understand that, but that's not the point. It's the same for everyone. Donny Buckley now is involved as the Monaghan senior coach. So if Banty gets a ban, I'm sure he'll have to take the training himself, as you'd expect he would be anyway. But it's frustrating. You see, like, this is one of those stories that you just hoped wouldn't emerge between the Dublin story and today, the date that the GAA were supposed to announce their fixtures plan for the upcoming months, and it's happened. So Larry McCarthy is going to be tearing his hair out, I think, this morning.
Yeah, no, it is terrible timing for them, and it'll be interesting to see what actually happens. And I'd be interested to know where the Dublin investigation is at the moment, because in many ways I kind of have of the opinion that the 12-week ban handed to Dessie Farrell sort of snookers the GAA in a way. Like, what more can they do if they've already dished out similar bans to Cork and Down management? That maybe the smartest course of action here for Monaghan would be to get out in front of it and give that 12-week ban to Seamus McEnany and move on. Or hope to move on, is what I should say. So it'll be interesting to see if the Dublin and Monaghan scenarios now are met with a greater frown from Croke Park than, say, the Down and Cork situations. It's going to be something we're going to be covering here across the morning. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can tweet us at Off the Ball or comment on the YouTube stream as ever if you want to get in touch. Neil Treacy at 7:42 this morning. How are you getting on?
I'm good, guys. How are you this morning?
Yeah, good. Plenty happening, I'd imagine.
Certainly is. I will just start by recapping the news. Obviously, you were discussing there, but a week on from the breach of training guidelines by Dublin, it's now reported the Monaghan footballers are being investigated by the GAA for a similar breach. Justice Minister Helen McEntee has sent footage of the alleged group training session to both Croke Park and the Gardaí. The session in question is believed to have taken place at the end of March, a few days before the session that saw Dublin manager Dessie Farrell suspended for 12 weeks by his own county board. The news will overshadow the GAA's expected announcement of their revised inter-county fixtures schedule later today. Inter-county training is allowed to resume from the 19th of this month, with underage sides following suit the week after. It's expected the GAA will announce a May 9th start for this year's Allianz Hurling League, and the Football League is likely to begin a week later. Meanwhile, the 85th edition of TheMasters gets underway this afternoon at Augusta National. Rory McIlroy will be among the early starters. He goes out at 3:42 Irish time alongside John Rahm and Xander Schauffele. Shane Lowry, meanwhile, he plays alongside Justin Rose and Matt Kuchar today, and they'll go off just before 10-6, while Dustin Johnson starts the defence of his green jacket at 3:30. We can hear now from Rory McIlroy, who says the aim of this week is just to simplify his game.
I'm actually getting away from a lot of technical thoughts. I'm actually going the other way. I've sort of simplified it down to just making the right body movements and instead of trying to get myself to get the club into certain positions. So if anything, I feel like I've simplified the whole process.
Chelsea have taken a big step towards a place in the Champions League semi-finals. They beat Sevilla 2-0 in their quarter-final first leg last night with goals from Mason Mount and Ben Chilwell. PSG won a thrilling game with Bayern Munich 3-2 in Germany. Manchester United and Arsenal both look to take a step towards the last four of the Europa League this evening. United are in Spain to face Granada in the first leg of their quarter-final, while Arsenal entertain Slavia Prague. Vera Pauw's Republic of Ireland side, meanwhile, have their first outing of the year this evening. They're taking on Denmark in a friendly. That game is in Tallaght Stadium and it kicks off at 6:30. In rugby, Ireland head coach Adam Griggs will name his team later this afternoon for the opening game of the Women's Six Nations in association with Guinness. Ireland begin their campaign against Wales on Saturday night. Wales were beaten heavily by France last weekend in the opening round of matches. Sevens star Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe is among the uncapped players who are in line to make their 15-a-side debuts. In racing, Tiger Roll is the star return as the Grand National Festival gets underway at Aintree this afternoon. The back-to-back Grand National winner goes in the Betway Bowl Chase at 10-3, while the Grade 1 Aintree Hurdle is the feature race this afternoon. Henry de Bromhead's Jason the Militant is set to go off favourite for that race. That gets underway at 3:25. And in snooker, Stephen Hendry's dream of a crucible return came to an end last night. the 7-time world champion, lost his second round qualifier 6-1 to China's Zhu Si. Dublin veteran Fergal O'Brien, meanwhile, takes on Stuart Carrington in his second round match later tonight.
Neil Treacy, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. At 7:45 this morning, let's tell you what's coming up over the next couple of hours here on OTB AM. We're going to be joined by Graham Hunter in just a moment to chat about an absolute classic in the first leg between Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich last night. We'll also do a bit on Real Madrid and look ahead to El Clasico this weekend as well. The sports page is coming your way at 8:10. We've already gone through the big story of the morning, and John Duggan is up at 8:30 with the sports news and with his final Masters preview ahead of this afternoon. Andy Friend will join us for a chat at 9:15 about the last few weeks at Connacht Rugby, and then Joe Molloy will be giving us a sample of his Masters preview at 9 o'clock this morning. Then of course you can get their full takes over at Golf Weekly on Patreon. The OTB TV picks with Sue at 9:20, and then Ronan O'Gara is up at 9:30. He was in conversation with Joe last night. Shane, the big story here that's getting completely overshadowed by your boys Monaghan is that unbelievable clash last night in the Champions League. Two beautiful styles of play in Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain, just creating a cocktail of madness.
Oh, the definition of end-to-end. I mean, like, I think John Duggan tweeted last night saying it made him forget about lockdown for a short time, and I think a lot of people, kind of football fans, would have felt the same way last night. Watching this game was just so enjoyable, every moment of it, and 5 goals probably. There could have been a lot more than 5 goals in that match, but and special mention to the referee as well. We gave the referee in the City Dortmund game a bit of guff the other day for his bad decision on the Jude Bellingham incident, but Antonio Mateo Lahoge, the referee last night, let the game flow. This was great to see. It definitely helped. You know, any incidents that required some action, he came back and dealt with them, but let the game flow. He took no crap. Let the game just roll. And just what a game. I mean, after 78 minutes, an image popped up on screen to say that Bayern had 25 attempts on goal to PSG's 5, and yet PSG led. So it was just one of those matches. I was worried a bit before the game. You know, Lewandowski missing for Bayern, Verratti missing for PSG, so a couple of big names. And then you see the players coming out onto the pitch in the snow, and Neymar's not got his gloves on, Mbappe's got his gloves on. So you're thinking, Mbappe's gone a bit soft here. He's not up for this. He doesn't like the cold weather. And then he does what he does. He was just extraordinary last night, Kylian Mbappe. And that was a test for Paris Saint-Germain. You know, I guess that the heat has been on them since they lost the final last year, and people saying they need this Champions League win to, I guess, officially join the big boys club in Europe. Manchester City are probably in the same bracket, but to feel at home in Europe's elite, beating Bayern Munich 3-2 at the Allianz Arena is not a bad way to do it. And just one of the more enjoyable games of football I think we've watched in recent months. So many different layers to it as well. I love the Marquinhos mic drop. Played 28 minutes, gets in 4 blocks, which is the highest amount of blocks made by any player in a single Champions League game this season. 28 minutes. He won 100% of his duels, 7 clearances, and of course he scored a goal as well. Just like in terms of half an hour of a game played by any individual, it has to be up there as one of the most memorable. The snow will make it stick out as something. And the fact that I think PSG had 10 touches in Bayern Munich's box, and Bayern Munich had 69 touches in the Paris Saint-Germain box, which is just incredible. And I guess it comes down to Lewandowski. Like, no disrespect to Choupo-Moting, who could be maybe a top 10 striker in the world, but the problem is Robert Lewandowski is maybe the best striker in the world, so that's always going to be a missing cog for them. Like this machine that looked so well oiled last year, you take one player out of it, you take the spearhead out of that team, and all of a sudden all their brilliant play can just result in something like that last night. It did have the feeling of a screenplay at times. When you mentioned the Marquinhos stuff, and even Choupo-Moting, his story, our own Ronan Mullen from Off the Ball, talking about this, his life almost being like a movie now. The fact that we remember him from Stoke City, and then of course he gets the move to Europe, and now look at him. He's just doing extraordinary things, and what a player. And like, Bayern didn't deal with corners well, they didn't deal with set pieces well, the long balls into the box. PSG clearly targeted that, but I guess the dramatic effect of it all was the camera work as well. They kept, anytime Thomas Müller did something good, they'd cut to Jogi Löw up in the stands, the German manager, who hasn't been having any plans for Thomas Müller at international level at the moment. It was kind of a two fingers up from Thomas Muller, his performance last night, and his performances generally recently. Lovely ball in from Joshua Kimmich as well for his header. And then they kept cutting to Oliver Kahn in the stands. It had echoes of Barcelona '99 when Solskjaer scored the winner in the Champions League final, and it cut to, I think it was maybe Lothar Matthäus in the stands, who just looked absolutely shell-shock. And then you have Sami Kufor beating the ground and just reacting like that. And with, anytime PSG scored, they cut up to Oliver Kahn in the stands. Per Oliver Kahn, Bayern legend, a board member now with Bayern, and someone who's due to take over the CEO of Bayern from 2022. And he's just sitting there, head in hands, desolate, and completely upset and distraught by this situation and the fact that his team have conceded 3 away goals in the Champions League quarterfinals. So it had all the feel of a screenplay, all the feel of just an absolutely cracking European tie. And a couple of people who afterwards saying, oh, maybe this European Super League wouldn't be a bad idea after all. But then again, Brian Kerr saying on TV last night, and rightly so, not every game is going to be like this in a potential European Super League. You're going to have some crap matches as well. But it was a really good advertisement for the Champions League. There's no doubt about it. You
need the knockout stages. Simple as that. If there's any place where, even if it's 2 legs, once you get to last 16 quarterfinals, it's just delivered year after year after year. The Champions League in recent years. We are continuing on this with Graham Hunter. Good morning to you, Graham.
How are you on?
Last night, a Renaissance painting of a game, Paris Saint-Germain against Bayern Munich.
You've thrown that at me because I've used that about a match once. That's a little dig, isn't it? It was playground football as well. I mean, I share your excitement, and I was absolutely glued to it. I had no interest really in watching Chelsea beat Porto. It's a match I've been looking forward to for a long time for several reasons. Number one, I think we're used to Champions League fights. I'm a devotee. I absolutely love the Champions League. And I'm sorry I just came in the middle of the last conversation. Whoever in Ireland was talking about the new League of Europe or whatever, they're tosh. They shouldn't be touching the Champions League. The opinion that the group games aren't fun enough is absolute mince. It's repeated by sheep. The knockouts are generally fabulous. Anybody who's my age remembers the old European Cup and the way in which it was stalemate, catenaccio, draw away from home, turgid. The finals were fear-filled. And this has been, we've lived in an era of European football where we haven't just been entertained during the Champions League, particularly in the knockout stages. It's changed the shape of football. It's changed the attacking intent of football. Teams for years now, planners, players, have treated away matches as if they were home matches. And again, anybody of my age remembers that that's anathema to the way football was played. So last season's final, even though it was in strange circumstances, I thought it didn't show the best of either team. So a rematch now, to me, I'd skin in the game because to my sponsors of my podcast, I'd suggest that Mbappe would overtake Haaland for ultimate top scorer in the competition. I suggested that PSG would knock Bayern out. I was laughed at. They're not through. Mbappe hasn't won the Pichichi yet. It isn't over, but boy, I enjoyed the first instalment. And I did think it was playground football. I'm not entirely sure why, because there were times when Bayern kind of shoot themselves off and stormed forward. And it looked as if PSG weren't going to get off the ropes. It ticked me off a little bit that having created 2 goals, Neymar didn't do what great players, even great feet, Peter Pan players like him should do, which is to say, I'll show for the ball, I'll take the pressure away, I'll draw this game to the other end of the pitch. And he went missing for a little while, and that tipped me off. And Danilo having to be moved out of centre midfield, where I thought he was prepared to have his best ever game for PSG. It just left the game where it looked like Bayern weren't simply going to keep on generating the number of chances that they did. Although, Taylor was very, very good, but was he producing mind-blowing saves? No. At any rate, at that stage, Bayern normally, particularly at home, crowd or not, will mash you, will just put you through the ringer. And ultimately, they didn't. I'm a huge Mbappe fan. I'm not predicting transfers anymore. That was once the case. But I am interested to see if he chooses to stay at Paris Saint-Germain. Why? His remarks last week about I hammered all the time, I get ticked off with it in this country, and that sounded like he wanted to accelerate his move to Real Madrid this summer. I live and work in Spain. I think Mbappe is at least a generational talent, if a renaissance talent, just to nick your own phrase. And therefore, I like the idea, but are we watching the last months of this PSG time? If not, are we watching him going, boy, it's fun to play with this team under Pochettino and lift the Champions League trophy and stay in France? I love all that because he's extraordinarily special. Players like him don't come along all that often. So to me, it was just an absolute Euro millions of a game last night. It was gorgeous.
It seems as well, Graham, that there has been this international forgiveness of Neymar that seems to have occurred. Like, I think you will have always said that he is one of the best players you've seen in recent years, but there was a reluctance, I think, maybe by a lot of people who would just tune into the Champions League to allow Neymar that because of his antics sometimes. I think while those antics haven't necessarily gone away, his performances in the last two Champions League campaigns in particular have just allowed everybody to take a step back and say, holy crap, what this guy can do is absolutely unbelievable.
I agree. You need a sieve with him. You need to pan for gold because he doesn't make friends easily, apart from Messi, who adores him. And I think there's a direct correlation between what you described on the pitch and off the pitch, because he's never quite gone, it's important to do this. Right throughout his career, and I only watched a little of it in Brazil because scouts here were telling the media here, look out, Neymar's coming. And of course, one of his last big games for Santos was in the World Club final against Barcelona, and Barcelona horsed his team, and he just basically stood by open mouthed and applauded Messi and kind of tried to touch him and get his autograph, even though he was going to join the Barcelona team not that long afterwards. The thing that's pockmarked his career even more than the type of injury I think it was Murillo gave him in the World Cup is this flippant Peter Pan. I'll always be good. I'll always be slender. I'll always be quick. There will always be second, third, and fourth chances. Going to the carnival is more important than helping out the club that pays me $300,000 a week in February. These things off the pitch, I think, are directly related. They're like stepbrothers of the people get tired of him rolling around on the pitch and faking to get free kicks. Or I remember well, he went through a phase where he wanted to promote his boots, didn't he? And he was at Barcelona and he played at Malaga one day. Malaga were still at that stage, a relatively denuded club. They weren't at the strongest base. Sandro was up front for them, Everton fans. Hello. And Neymar wanted to show off his boots, so he stood in front of a free kick that was going against Barcelona and wouldn't move and bent it unnecessarily tie his boots. He booked him. First time that Malaga nicked at him, he reacted but sent off Barcelona. Almost, these little things, including the point you made about his self-indulgence on the pitch, they have pockmarked his career a lot. One thing I would say is that certainly when I was watching him professionally rather than just as an admirer of football now that he's out of the country I work in, he does get a lot of grief on the pitch, physical grief. He still gets quite a lot of the doings. And has that made him wake up and smell a coffee and say, one of these days, one of these tackles will put me out for 8 months when I'm 31 or 32, and suddenly I'll look around and time will have flown. Carpe diem is not really one of Neymar's phrases. So he's a disappointing footballer all in all, because he could have been one of the modern greats. I agree with you. I'm not certain that he has been.
Hey, Graham, myself and Eoin were speaking this morning about how the game last night just made us forget about lockdown for a while, which was really, really enjoyable. And Keith Wood was on our show yesterday, the former Irish rugby international, and he was talking about seeing a game behind closed doors last weekend, Munster against Toulouse, really high quality. Look, these are international footballers. Of course, they're elite. But are you surprised by the level at which these players are reaching, given that there are no fans? We talked about the lack of atmosphere and what impact that might have on football matches at the moment. But to see teams like PSG and Bayern going at it last night, does any element of it surprise you how well these teams are doing?
Shane, it's an exciting question. I'm known for speaking in capital letters, and even I wouldn't claim that I always get my sentences right. And one of the times I was a little bit wrong was when there was a restart here in Spain last June, I reckon, after a proper lockdown. I was surprised. I was really surprised about how match sharp all the athletes had managed to keep themselves, how the quality of that's 11 game sprint in La Liga was soared. The quality was wonderful because, the complete package of any male or female athlete at the top level is it's not just physical, it's mental too. And therefore, I think, in my opinion, I watch a lot of Keith's sports still to this day. I still watch a lot of cricket and a lot of golf above and beyond the football. And therefore, I broadly have been a little bit surprised. And the way I would compliment it would be that yesterday I was fortunate enough to spend a long time, 45 minutes interviewing Kevin De Bruyne. And just he tossed away a casual phrase in the middle of an answer where he went, physically we're fine. And he didn't just mean Manchester City. He was talking about the current great players in this situation. He said, physically we're fine. We're elite athletes. He said, the tough thing is mental freshness in this situation. And the tough thing is winning and winning again in the type of vacuum of the normal stimuli that Keith was talking about to you in order to help you be elite in performance over and over and over again. So that mental side, it's funny how malleable we are as the human spirit, human psychology, because mostly the sports I watch at the level you're asking about, mostly they've excelled, and planners and coaches and players and reserves have become accustomed far more quickly than I know we're a year into it nearly. But I've become, and I've begun to speak more regularly to footballers in the interviews that I do about what they feel about the absence of crowds. And it's that little stimulus that will lift you when you're not fresh, when maybe you're losing, or the stimulus to when you're on top of a team as Bayern were last night, to put your foot absolutely to the floor and thrash them. So we see an influence still to this day, even though broadly most sports have become used to not having fans. We do see marginal changes in what we're watching and how the results are. But just to go back to I think De Bruyne answered your question. I think that the point Keith was making, I think if you're physically fine and you're technically excellent, you can see. I mean, was it the Leinster defeat of Munster you were talking about? I think it was.
Munster losing to Toulouse.
To Toulouse after that. So that was after that game. Pardon me. Then I think reaching a level of excellence is feasible. And De Bruyne's point is a complimentary one about what does surprise me is how they've kept themselves mentally engaged, mentally fresh. When they because what we often forget about, I don't know if Keith touched on this, it's all these people that we admire and watch, although you and Eoin and I, we get to meet them and talk to them. A lot of people in our industry, and certainly some of the public, forget that they're human beings with their own fears. So, for example, not long ago, I sat and interviewed Rafa Varane prior to the Atalanta tie. Fascinating, articulate, charming, made a real bond with him, was wishing him well in terms of his personal performance against Liverpool. Morning of the game, bang, he's gone COVID. There's a fear for him. He's got young kids. They have all these men and women who entertain us in sports since the pandemic arrived. They've had their own fears and losses because of it, and yet they still go out and perform. That's the mental, psychological side, Shane, that long after this is gone and vaccines have reduced the threat, that I'll be admiring them and I'll be thankful for what they've given us.
Can I just pick up briefly there, Graham, on the Kevin De Bruyne point? I mean, that's fascinating that you had that time to sit down with him. And obviously we had the news yesterday of his new contract with Manchester City. And the really interesting points as well, that he kind of did his own research and had his own stats people do research into what he will bring to the club and what the club will bring to him in terms of his trophy ambitions over the coming years. And another extraordinary performance from him the other night. What sort of tidbits did you garner from him in speaking with him? I mean, Just another quote unquote, I guess, Peter Pan player.
Yeah, I use that phrase. I'll come to De Bruyne. So I use that phrase in a derogatory way. I wouldn't say I would use it to them, because my Peter Pan allusion is to guys who think they'll always be as they are. They won't be, and they waste time. That's my dig there in general. And De Bruyne, I admire him as much as you do. I think he's a deeply intelligent footballer. And after the interview, I spoke to one of his coaches who's like really hard, really bright, really football intelligent man who doesn't suffer fools gladly. Tidbits I can't give, because this interview, there were two parts to the interview, and they don't come out in one case for a couple of weeks, another case for a couple of months. What I would tell you was that his mood, we never once talked about renewal, but his mood was buoyant. He was patient. He was very, very good at explaining his art. He was extremely good at explaining the technique of how he does what he does. Again, one of the reasons that I've loved being involved with Off the Ball for however many years is now, since 2003, is the breadth of coverage you give to all world sports, which in my opinion is at higher quality than the BBC in the UK. And therefore you speak to a lot of different people. And I suspect that you choose so wisely about who answers your questions that probably you don't speak to those in their sports who can do but can't explain. What I treasure is finding footballers, because that's broadly where I operate, who can not only show us that they're elite, show the leadership, show the technique, show their toughness, but they can explain what it is that they do that makes them different, and explain the technical side of this sport that we all appreciate and we describe in our reports and our conversations like this. But we need to be fed from them, because they keep advancing all the time. And that's what De Bruyne did. I mean, he talked a little bit about the influence of Pep. He talked a little bit about one of the themes that came out most strongly. And I think it clashed a little bit, I will not exaggerate it, with public perception of Manchester City, because I think it's perceived as being a millionaire's playground. It's funded by a foreign state to Manchester, and people question, is it brilliance of planning, or is it pure money injection? The theme that came out over and over again with De Bruyne was that one of the reasons that he's staying is the winning mentality that he sees around him day to day, in the playing staff, in the coaching staff, in the owners, that there's a relentless hunger to win, and he expects that to abide. And that was one of the most, one of the strongest themes, because he, again, like many elite people I speak to, he said, I abhor losing. I detest losing. I cannot stand it. I have to win. I'm not here to be comfortable. It's not, he said, if I wasn't enjoying and if I wasn't winning, he said, never mind the money, I would stop now. So for those who look at the length of the contract he signed, Sheahan, at 29, I thought those are themes and words that promise good things in the remainder of his City career, which wasn't it till 2025, I think, which if he's 21. So it's a deal that maybe takes him to something like 33, which is, it's a hell of a deal to be signing at that age. Really impressive. Yeah,
it certainly is. There was definitely a part of my brain last night, or 2 nights ago, watching De Bruyne and Haaland on opposite sides and thinking to myself, God, this would just be magical to see them both in the same park.
There was a little thing at the end, wasn't there, between Foden and Haaland, where everyone went, oh, look, they like each other, they're talking there, done deal.
Well, you were on with us, I'd say, a month ago, Graham, and you were one of the first people to confidently say on the show that Spain are going to play a big part in the future of where Erling Haaland goes. We've now seen over the past couple of weeks that the Haaland tour has taken itself to the Bernabeu and to the Camp Nou, and Mino Raiola and Haaland Senior are both willing to flog Erling to one of the Spanish clubs if they outbid Manchester City. What's your sense on who the most likely of those two are to get the job done, and if they will actually beat Manchester City to the chase?
It's a really confusing picture. I thank you for asking that way, because I'm very breaking news. My sense of it is that Joan Laporta, understandably, is completely obsessed by buying Haaland. And I wrote a column for ESPN talking about how understandable that is, because people will immediately point to the ridiculous debt, 1.1 billion globally, that Barcelona have imposed upon themselves by their stupidity. There's something like 700 million that's scheduled to be repaid this summer, although some of that will be rescheduled. So the debt picture is horrendous, but Laporta will attract new money, new credit, and therefore he's placed in a position of going, is this, although he bears no physical resemblance, is this the next Messi or Cristiano that we're looking at? Is Haaland that? And if so, do you grab him at any cost and just say, God, we've got him. We make him part of our own. We make him happy for 7 years. We make sure he's not doing us damage. All these things are going through. Now, different things are going through Florentino Perez's mind, given that they spent an enormous amount on the stadium. The stadium will become a talking point. It's going to be an event stadium, not a football stadium. An event stadium where they keep the pitch under the Paseo Castellano, the big long road that bisects Madrid. They're going to keep it's going to be like a little Bela Lugosi thing. The pitch is going to be kept in perfect condition, buried under the road, and then hauled up mechanically to be placed for football games. I don't know, 35 times a year, and the rest of the year, once the Bernabeu is finished, it's going to be an event space, a conference space. It's going to be generating huge money for Madrid, and that will change their place in the firmament, maybe make it even higher up in the firmament. But that's costing at the moment, and their objective was Mbappe, without question. Their objective. He came and trained there. He idolises Zidane. He told them a couple of years ago when leaving Monaco, I'll sign for you if you get rid of one of Bale, Cristiano or Benzema. They didn't. He didn't sign for them. They regret it, obviously. So they're looking at Haaland and going, yeah, we kind of want you if we don't get Mbappe, but not quite that bluntly, which is not a great message to be giving out to anybody. So at the moment, I don't know where he's going. The Eintracht Frankfurt result last weekend obviously made it far less likely Dortmund play in the Champions League, and therefore far more likely that Haaland says, I'm going. Dortmund don't have to sell him. Zorki keeps saying, we're not going to sell him. That's probably German man speak with forked tongue. So, yeah, I wish I knew where he was going. It did kind of look as if he was quite excited to be talking to guys in sky blue strips the other day. I can't avoid saying that. So I wish I had a story for you about where. But if the 20 million, the reports in the media here that Alfinger Haaland and Raiola need to get 20 million quid for consultancy on the deal each, they look leaked. If that's true, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back for me. I can't imagine Barcelona in their current state saying, there's all that money to Dortmund, there's all that money we're going to pay Haaland, the player, and there's 40 mil between the two people representing him. That bit would need to change, otherwise I don't see him playing in Spain next summer. But Barcelona want him to be. They want him to be their big signing. There's no question about that.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, as you say, maybe Real Madrid are putting him off the scent with their interest in Mbappe. Barcelona might be thrown off the scent because they're in debt and maybe can't afford to pay his dad a hell of a lot of money as well as the player himself, which kind of leaves Manchester.
He's coming to the Bows. If you want, the Bows have got him. There you are. It's as simple as that. If that's what you were fishing for. The Bows fans, get ready. It's Haaland next season.
The other big talking point from the week we wanted to put to you, Graham, was this Real Madrid performance a couple of nights ago. It seems like a really stupid thing to say in hindsight, but if you've got a midfield of Casemiro, Kroos and Modric, it's probably a bad idea to write them off in the first instance.
Yeah, but that's the wrong phrase. It's probably the wrong idea to give them time and space.
Yeah.
The whole after you, Claude, nature of Liverpool's performance just baffled me. I know that their batteries are run down mentally as much as physically. But we'd had Jota back for it. If you look at the first goal, because, I swear that the amount of technology that's available in the football industry now allows you to predict what your opponent will have for breakfast a week on Tuesday and where he's going his holidays in 2025. So your software will also tell you Toni Kroos doesn't like being harassed and pressed because he's a little bit slower than he was. Toni Kroos does like being given lots of room to quarterback things. And look at the first goal. He's dropped deep. He's on the right side of Madrid's build. And, you know, at that stage, it's got to be, I think, Wijnaldum and Jota. When I looked at the pitch positions, neither of them, or Mane, who can come across, none of them have closed him, look like pressing him or shouting to each other, we've got to get. And you know, he, from that, given that amount of time, he could put a 75-yard pass on a thin down blindfolded. So the fact that he picked out the flipping crest on Vinicius' shirt was not a surprise. For some, the surprise was the brilliance of Vinicius' control, because, you know, all I heard in post-analysis was, look at the two centre-halves and two far. I mean, geez, I almost used a phrase that I've not used live on radio. I mean, for goodness sake, there were minuscule mistakes in the placement of Liverpool central defenders, because they had the right to expect that their teammates would try to asphyxiate Kroos and that the ball wouldn't be allowed to be delivered so perfectly. So there you go. Second one, that's why in my book Keita was whipped off immediately, because Klopp had roared at them about, don't let that happen. To the second goal, Kroos is on the other side of the pitch, therefore it's another sector of players who haven't done their work properly, including Keita. And his ball is a little bit less good this time, but it's good enough to catch Trent off. So to answer your question, it wasn't. I don't think anybody was writing them off because Real Madrid. There was. I spoke to 4 or 5 different people, some who are in their camp, some who work with players there. One guy who reports to them, and they all said, Madrid is mucho Madrid. It's a way of saying what you said, never write them off. This is pre-match, even though Varane had been coveted out of the contest. And Liverpool didn't have to excel. They didn't have to be at the level they were when they pumped Barcelona 4-0. They simply had to go, give them no space, give them no time to think, give them no time to breathe. And they had that capacity. Jota is not one of these who's been overused. Okay, he's back from injury. But they could have asked the front three to press voraciously and not allow Kroos to quarter back. And Fabinho was the hidden hero of knocking Barcelona out. Because across the tie, he was Casemiro, but in a red shirt. Streetwise, a little bit thuggish, got away with things with the referee, broke up flow. And then on the third goal, it's like schoolboys who play football. Like, when is the throw in near your own box? You don't go chasing the ball if it's lobbed in there. You stay with your man, because it's the box. If you give your man, you know, half a metre, never mind 4 metres, which he did, you're screwed. And Fabinho's decision to go chasing the ball in the line, and then, Modric has got it now, and his body weight was all wrong, and Modric was like, thank you very much, pal. And what happens is Phillips gets a beating for the fact that the ball goes through his legs, and Vinicius hits. That's not the point. The point is, don't let a Ballon d'Or winner have oodles of space. James Tiberius Kirk told us first, space, the final frontier. Toppy would have said space has to be denied against Real Madrid, and they didn't own, and it was bizarre.
Very quickly, Graham, a prediction for El Clasico this weekend?
Yeah, thank you for that. Barcelona are much smarter now than they were. I think they're capable of winning, and I think that Real Madrid's eggs are all in the Liverpool basket. So it might even be Messi's last Clasico, and don't forget that. We all think he's going to stay now, but the ink isn't dry in a contract. It might be, big capital letters, this might be Leo Messi's last Clasico. Barca.
Yeah, now what a shame, as Shane said earlier on, to have that without fans there, but God, it's an unbelievable prospect, and what a title race. Graham Hunter, we'll chat to you again soon, no doubt. Thanks a million.
Adios.
Graham Hunter there on the line, reflecting on what was an unbelievable midweek of football, let's face it. Nothing like the Champions League on a morning like this. Right, it is 19 minutes past 8 on this Wednesday morning. You're listening to OTB AM, which is live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We've got a packed show still to come. Connacht head coach Andy Friend will join us a little bit later on for an exclusive chat. There's Aintree and TheMasters previews with John Duggan later this hour. And up next, we're bringing you the sports pages.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. Off the ball.
Jamie caught Frank with quite a bad challenge, and the physio was patching him up, and Les Seeley, his turned to Frank. He went, Frank, get back on and do him good and proper. He said he took a liberty there. He said, make sure you leave it on him good and proper. And I'm stood there, I'm thinking, oh, hang on, He's talking about him doing this ain't right, you know.
Off the Ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Have you changed and the way you see the game, or has the game just changed?
No, I think the fundamentals will always be the fundamentals. I can give probably a good example of this. To try, I was on the receiving end of it, and I touched it down under the post actually in Bordeaux when Munster beat Toulouse in the semi-final in 2000. And it was a beautiful day, and I think before I received the ball, I think there was 5 offloads. Yeah. We started to play on the left-hand side on our own 22 with we saw the space, we played to the space, and we kept the ball alive. So you're going back over 20 years there, Joe, and that's where, that's for me there's nothing different in that period of passage of play than what was played on Friday night. Right. And that's, for me, is the reality of it. I think... I like the fact where you try to overspeed it in training, and it's probably something I'm experimenting as a coach with to see how you can do that. And I watch a lot of football, and I kind of watch Man City, and I'm fascinated with their work without the ball, how they kind of high press and just how it just feeds into their own energy and their own speed. Then when they're on the ball, that the kind of 40 seconds they've done pressing, I think takes an edge off the team they're playing, and that means that they can play their attack game a little bit easier. So the game has changed in many regards. Yes, I still think that there is a place, no matter how athletic the forwards are nowadays, they still love a little the ball in front of them at times and chasing the opposition and keeping them in the corner, like England have done for many a season in a successful campaign. But there's so many different options and so many different wrinkles to play, and the reality is that you need you need a lot of tools in your toolbox if you want to be successful.
That's true. And look, that Toulouse game, it was about 30 degrees and it was hot, and you can play that kind of rugby. To be fair to your Munster team, they would have played a lot of winter rugby on lashing rain in Limerick, so you can't be going bananas then.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Yeah, Ronan O'Gara there in conversation with Joe on Wednesday Night Rugby last night. We'll bring you that full chat after 9:30 this morning. By the way, if you missed it, it's an absolutely brilliant conversation. Joe as well is going to be with us after 9 to look ahead to the Masters. A little bit of a sneak preview of what he's going to say on Golf Weekly this week, and we're going to have John Duggan with us shortly as well. But at 8:24 on this Thursday morning, let's have a look at the sports pages, and we can start with otbsports.com. Those Ronan O'Gara quotes leading the way there. I watch Manchester City and their work without the ball. Meanwhile, Irish sprinter Leon Reid charged with drug offences in the UK. So go on to OTB Sports to read a little bit more on that. Stories on Mo Salah as well, stories on Tiger Roll, and French Open to be delayed due to France's lockdown as well on the homepage there. As we already mentioned, the front and back of the Irish Independent this morning leads with this Monaghan story. Garda probe into video of Monaghan GAA training session is on the front page, and on the back page, GAA vow to investigate claims of Farney breach. So the revised roadmap for the GAA was due to be released today. It is still due to be released today, but maybe this hampers the reality of that roadmap? I'm not so sure. We would love to hear your thoughts on that. You can drop us a tweet at Off the Ball if you've got any opinions on this Monaghan situation. Is it worse than Dublin? Is it the same as Dublin? Is it a better look than Dublin? We haven't got pictures yet, and they're not on the front page of the newspaper, so maybe there's a lack of appreciation of the fact there were 25 people allegedly at this training session. The back page of the Herald goes with that story as well. Croker to probe alleged breach. Also, Grace, I have faith in Ireland. This is Grace Maloney ahead of their friendlies over the next couple of days. But of course, the 2023 World Cup is in their sights. The Irish Sun, man with a golden touch. Mount gives Thomas edge. The back of the Irish Daily Mail is capital loss. FAI have conceded Dublin are unlikely to host Euros. Meanwhile, The Guardian, Chelsea swagger, Mount and Chilwell put Porto on the ropes. The London Times goes with De Bruyne landing his £80 million deal, and a photograph there of Mason Mount as well, banging in an unbelievable goal to put Chelsea 1-0 up against FC Porto last night. That leads the way in the Mirror. Lion Kings, first Foden, now goal-hungry England star Mount and Chilwell are quarter-final heroes. And Kev scores with a pen as well. De Bruyne negotiated his own £83 million deal without an agent and using stats to show City Chiefs why he's worth every penny. Don't have to dig too deep into the stats to show why Kevin De Bruyne is absolutely worth that. The back page of the Irish Daily Star is Aviva Dirty, tab of the morning to you, and that one. Scots are doubling up on Irish Euros misery. So Dublin's loss is expected to be Scotland's gain when UEFA finalises plans later this month for hosting rights at Euro 2020. Maybe, just maybe though, Ireland are living in more of a reality than some of the other nations due to host Euro 2020. Sure, things have been absolutely desperate, and Ireland have been in a way worse position than a lot of their European counterparts COVID-wise over the last 6 months or so, but maybe they're also living in a bit of reality as well, thinking we're not going to be able to fill a stadium 25%. How many of those stadiums are actually going to get to 25% would be my question outside of the UK, obviously. Blues cruise past Porto is their headline then on the Champions League last night. The Daily Telegraph goes with a story about Tiger Woods. Speeding Woods crashed at 87 miles per hour. American accidentally hit the accelerator before car flipped. Californian police closed case as there were no eyewitnesses. It was 87 miles per hour in a 45 zone when he accelerated out of control to cause his death-defying car crash. So that's the story in the Daily Telegraph. The Irish Times then leads with the Masters once again. Philip Reid is calling it as a wide open Masters. Many major prize. I think that was certainly the sense we got from John Duggan yesterday when he was going through his virtual insanity tips. 3 is the magic number at Augusta. The 4 short holes that must be mastered if a player has designs on a green jacket. Philip Reid has gone through juniper, golden ball, redbud and flowering crabapple, the 4 par 3s. And then the Irish Examiner. Mount and Chilwell strike as Blues bounce back in style, and Arteta asks for patience after Tierney injury. Meanwhile, Solskjaer vows not to overplay Rashford. That is the build-up to Manchester United tonight. Shane, that's is it going to be a dual screen for you? Golf on one screen, Manchester United on the other, or will it be your retro sharp jersey on, Granada versus Man United all the way?
I have a bone to pick about dual screeners. I think I know a lot of people have kind of utilised it a lot this week, especially on people wanted to watch City and Dortmund on Tuesday and Liverpool Real Madrid. I focused on City Dortmund, and then last night focused on, well, obviously Bayern PSG as opposed to Chelsea Porto. But I don't know how people do it. Like when a match is on, I know yourself and Jer spoke about this before, about the flicking through your phone as a match is on, like and then dual screening as well. I just don't have the mental capacity to deal with that. You have to focus on one match, put the phone down for 45 minutes. At halftime, pick up the phone, see how Twitter's reacting, and then for 45 minutes, go at it again. These people who sit watching 2 matches and also flick on their phone, you probably get to the 90 minutes and you're like, well, I think that was a good match. Was it? I don't know. Like, you have to focus on one match. But yeah, I've totally forgotten about Granada Manchester United tonight because Bayern PSG has just transformed my existence. It's been an incredible game. United will win. The easiest tie they could have got in the quarterfinals of the Europa League, and a trophy is massive for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, regardless of what he says about trophies. So, an exciting time for United fans if they can keep some of these wins going.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. I think the last couple of days have really shown up the gulf in quality between the Champions League and literally everything else. Obviously, we've been watching international football through an Ireland prism. I didn't watch a lot of England. Maybe England are up to the level that we saw over the last couple of days. I'd highly doubt it. It's certainly, having watched a lot of Arsenal kick a ball around in Europa League over the past couple of months, the Champions League is just on a different stratosphere, really. It's just unbelievable quality. Even in the frozen tundra of Munich, it still manages to prevail. We've got a comment in here from MOC on YouTube who says he doesn't see a problem with fit young men training outdoors. It is a non-story, he says, Shane. Like, this is going to be a natural reaction to what a lot of to a lot of these stories, and to Monaghan this morning, Shane, that this isn't a big story, that the actual act of training outdoors and kicking a ball around and training is what people will focus on, and that's not a big deal. Yes, it is against restrictions, but in the grand scheme of things, there are more grisly things happening on this island. There are worse stories to focus on.
But this is why the Dublin reaction interested me, and why the Monaghan reaction now is going to interest me further, because people are coming down on two sides. They came down on two sides of the Irish Independent, even covering the Dublin story on the front page with the photographs. Some people saying this is crazy. Why are they out training, these 9 players? And saying this is definitely a legitimate front page story. And then others saying this is not front page news. There's more important things going on. But I guess that the discourse and the conversation that came out of it, I guess, it meant that it was a front page story. Everyone in the country was talking about it to an extent. And the Monaghan story as well. Like, yeah, don't see a problem with fit young men training outdoors. Fine. Like, maybe the chances of one of these Monaghan players bringing COVID, symptomatic or asymptomatic, into the camp are slim to none. But having, and that's based on the community transmission figures, which are quite low, thankfully. But the fact of the matter is, if just one of these players has an asymptomatic case and brings COVID into the Monaghan camp, and I'm sure they're in close quarters with each other at this training session, this alleged breach, then it's a massive story. You're bringing a county with fairly low numbers at the moment, Monaghan, and bringing the numbers way up again in terms of cases. So it's not a non-story. Of course it's not a non-story. I see why people are upset that teams can't be out training at the moment, given the low community transmission. But the fact is, today's the day for the GAA to announce the fixture schedule, and this has thrown a spanner in the works. So certainly not a non-story.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it's two separate things. I think you're more than entitled to be pissed off with the restrictions and maybe the reality that footballers would actually be okay training out in the open. You're more than entitled to think that. But that's not what this is about. I guess this speaks to a wider theme within the GAA, and I know this has been covered quite a bit over the last week because the Dublin thing threw up the exact same talking points, but this general sense of paranoia that exists in Gaelic games, that everybody needs to be training all the time. And this is happening with a club in West Cork who are under investigation at the moment for coming back training as well. The paranoia that exists at club level, at county level, whether you're the Dubs and are paranoid about what's coming over your shoulder, or you're paranoid about not getting past Cavan this year, if you're Monaghan, and actually keeping up with the pack. There was just a general sense of what is my neighbour doing, curtain twitching, wondering what is going on elsewhere. I better do my best to ensure that we are at the supposed level that other people are at. Like that is the wider theme at issue here, and that is certainly the why. If you're asking that, why are these counties doing it? It's because of that culture that's existed forever in the GAA. The not drinking over the course of a winter. They're doing the extra training session in October, November before the following year's Allianz League, despite the fact that it's 4 months ahead of schedule. That all plays into the same thing, and I'm not sure if there's anything that will ever change that anytime soon in the GAA. But it's of little surprise that this would be an organisation that would try and circumvent rules in that way.
No, and people talk about players, like these are grown men. Of course they're grown men, and of course they have the decision to go to these training sessions or not. But the reality is, they all have ambitions to play for their county. If this alleged training breach by Monaghan is in fact true, then you cannot point too much blame at the players for showing up, because in their minds, okay, this is a training session. If I don't show up, then perhaps for the league and championship, I won't be considered for the Monaghan team. So the buck has to stop with the management. If this was a training session organised by the management, and I know Monaghan GAA have come out themselves, Declan Flanagan today, and said that they were not aware of this or any training session involving any Monaghan teams, club or county. If that's true, then fine. But someone has organised this. 25 lads didn't show up at least 25 people didn't show up to Carduff Gales training ground on a whim and just by chance happened to bump into each other. This was arranged by someone, and you know that someone will come out and I guess Dublin hammered Dessie Farrell quite quickly and you know I guess made it a non-story in some ways and made people forget about it a little bit. Monaghan GAA have to do the same this afternoon, latest. They have to come down quickly and you know release a stronger statement than I think the one they have done. And Seamus McEnany is the one whose neck will have to be on the line.
It's interesting that you look at both stories, the Dublin story and the Monaghan story. The one similarity is that you have, I guess, a request from the Irish Independent to both county boards, and their immediate response is, we don't know about the training sessions. So the blame goes firmly on the county manager. And of course, nothing to suggest that they didn't know anything. Of course, they didn't know anything about it. It is this independent of a county board scenario is what we're getting and is what we're seeing. And that allows them to, I guess, firmly point a finger at one person. Like I think Cork, Down, Dublin and Monaghan will all agree that they would prefer their manager to be missing for 12 weeks than one of their star players. Like Brian Fenton was photographed in the Dublin situation. I'm sure you'll get a star Monaghan player if you had photographs that were published in a national newspaper as well today. It's better for them for the manager to be gone than the players to be gone. So in a way there's a satisfying outcome here for the counties. Was it worth it in the end if they had actually got some good training done over the past month? Maybe it was. And that's what will really frustrate those counties who haven't been training, because I'm sure there's a few of them as well. And I think that comes back to the point that Eamon Fitzmaurice was making over the course of the weekend and on the Irish Examiner podcast, that those training dates need to be pushed back because in fact they've gained an advantage and there's not that much of a punishment. There are tons of different coaches who can just take over the training over the next little while. John Duggan, you're with us this morning. How are you getting on?
Good, Owen and Shane, are you well?
Very well. Just like a massive couple of days for you personally over the next little while, but just a quick update on the Monaghan story. I presume that we've heard nothing yet from the GAA in terms of how this might affect the roadmap, and I guess it's all speculation on that front.
Well, I think the first thing to say with the Monaghan thing is, like last week when we saw the Dublin story, it was clear from the photographs all over the paper in the Irish Independent what the deal was. We don't know for 100% certainty what was in the dossier that was anonymously sent to the Justice Minister, which he used to refer to the Gardaí and to the GAA. So I think until that comes out, obviously there's a lot of certainty when people see things and they can report on them, and you have to trust the Irish Independent's reporting because they've been writing this so far. But I don't think it's going to change the roadmap. It's a bit of an embarrassment and an inconvenience for the GAA when they present their master fixture revised plan later today for the intercounty and the club season. These are questions they don't want to be answering. I think there's a huge degree of frustration within Croke Park because they described what happened with Cork and Down as very disappointing. We also saw with Dublin that they jumped the story last week with Dessie Farrell's suspension. So what will Monaghan do today? Because the chairperson said he wasn't aware of any situation. So it could take a little bit longer for the facts and the punishments, if they are to apply, to emerge. It could be the case, guys, by the time we get to that, we'll be almost thinking about what the first fixtures are going to be for the intercounty season, which could be league matches in early May in hurling and then football to follow a week later. So it's not good optically, but I do think the one thing about the 24/7 news cycle is things do move very, very quickly, and by next week something else will be in train. But it's, once again, to me, there is a disconnect between the huge degree of affirmation of the fact that the GAA is an amateur sport, and it's so great that it's amateur and it's really wedded to the community, and the reality that for intercounty players a lot of it is very much elite and almost professional in all but name.
Yeah, without question. We'll have more updates on this story as it breaks throughout the day on OTBSports.com. John, this is the week where we're constantly reminded that you've been to every sporting event in the world, bar that one. Yeah, bar that one elusive one right at the top of your bucket list, I imagine, the Augusta Masters.
That is at the top of the bucket list, though, and I've been lucky enough to be at some of the great events in the world. Not all of them now. I'll still go to Boca River when the crowds return, or Wimbledon, or the Epsom Derby and these kind of things. But the Masters. I mean, who wouldn't want to be there? Unless you're accredited, it costs you a lot of money. It costs thousands. I do see the guy with the Kerry jersey there every year, so. He must have some good connections, but apparently, like, the area itself is apparently not meant to be the most salubrious place But once you get inside the grounds of Augusta National, I think it's meant to be like paradise lost, isn't it? Very hilly, actually, that you don't see in the TV. It's quite undulating. And we all know the holes on the TV. I remember the first time I went to New York, which was in 2009. First thing I did, I got into a yellow taxi and I was told to have a nice day, and did every single cliched thing for the week in New York. And it did come across to me in reality that I was actually on the movie set of what New York was like. I'm sure Augusta is the same. If you stand around the 12th tee at Amen Corner and you see those shots being catapulted towards the green over the water, or sometimes falling into the water, you see the players finishing on 11, or if you're sitting at the up the hill at 18, where you see the approach shots come in. It is a magical tournament. Since I was a young lad watching it in the late 1980s in poor old Ireland, Dallas was beamed into the TV screens like late on a Friday or on a Saturday night, and you thought, this is the most exotic thing, this show called Dallas and JR. And the Masters had a bit of that from a sporting perspective. Greener than green place with green jackets and thing, and now thankfully in life has got much more accessible that you can actually imagine going there, which I don't think is something that any of us could have imagined a long time ago.
Shane, you've been to Augusta.
I've been to Augusta, the town, as opposed to Augusta, the beautiful golf course. I spent a summer in Myrtle Beach in South Carolina a few years ago, 6 years ago, and we passed through Augusta, spent a little bit of time there, and oh my God, the world's grimmest place. Do you know the way in the office, the US office, they picked Scranton, Pennsylvania, and in the UK office, they picked Slough as this dark grey kind of industrial place. Like, Augusta has that feeling of this place that is just, I guess, dystopian is the best word I can think of. It's not a nice town whatsoever. So the fact that such a beautiful golf course and Amen Corner and all that lies so close to it is in stark contrast to the nearby town, I think.
What John Duggan would give for 1 hour in such a bleak grey town like Augusta, Georgia.
It'd be like a Razorhead, if anybody's seen the movie. So you might have to Google that, lads.
Finally, on the Masters, before we get into entry, any final movement on who you're thinking is going to win? Are you looking at course conditions or anything and thinking, oh, this could favour X or Y?
Well, my tips are on otbsports.com and on the app in the golf section. And I've gone for Patrick Cantlay as the main headline tip. I actually think Lowry could have a chance in these conditions this week. He's driving the ball well with that new Strixon driver. He's got a great touch around the greens. If he can put well on these glassy greens, I think that you're going to need good putters, because that's why I always think Phil did always so well. And that's why I've had a bit of a each way on him for first round leader, because you need someone like Woods or Phil that has got nerve over these clutch foots, these 6 footers, because if you miss the green, you might be scrambling to 5 or 6 feet. Like the 15th, for example, is a hole that, you know, you overshoot the green with your second shot and then you chip it up, and then you might miss the putt, and then you got a really snaky one back. It is all going to be about accuracy of the approaches, because if you head in the wrong spot of these contoured greens, you're in for a tricky situation putting on these slopes. So I think iron play is going to be very important, and I think the putters with nerve and people who have bottle. So you're looking for proven winners, and that's why Justin Thomas is so popular. That's why Spieth is coming into everybody's equation. I had Spieth last week and I was watching him in Texas, and he was putting with a lot of sure confidence on those greens. That's what you want. You want people that can put well on those greens. And but there's going to be shocks, Shane and Owen. There always is. There's always an unheralded name that sometimes can propel themselves to the top of the leaderboard in the Masters. Len Matisse, Kenny Perry in recent years, Angel Cabrera won it. We could have a surprise or two. I think Shane has a better chance than Rory this week.
Right, that's interesting. The odds obviously not suggesting that, but you can check them out as ever on otbsports.com, as John mentioned. Just quickly on entry then, John, is there kind of a tint of sadness to Tiger Roll and what could have been in an alternate universe?
Very much so. I really don't understand what they were doing here. Red Rum won 3 Grand Nationals in the 1970s. It's never been equalled. Tiger Roll, they had a chance to do it. The horse is obviously in rude health, given you won so easily at Cheltenham in the cross-country race last time. If you win 2 Grand Nationals, you deserve to be carrying top weight in the race. So I really don't understand. Look, like the O'Learys pay the bills, so it's up to them, whatever they want to do. That's their right completely. So I'm not saying that in any way that their right should be in any way tarnished. But I'm just a bit disappointed, because I think racing could have, done with the story. of Tiger Roll for going for 3 Grand Nationals. And if he does win 2 Grand Nationals, you have to be carrying top weight, and you have to accept that, like, we have Gold Cup horses running in the Grand National for many years, and what would happen is they're seen as the best horses, and other horses would carry a lot less weight. So the complaining about the handicapper, to me, I just think is a little bit, it doesn't see the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that the horse should be running. And I don't think the horse is going to run well in this race today, because I think the fences will not suit him. He hasn't run in a conditions race for years. And I just think that I'd love to see Tiger Roll, who is a specialist around those entry fences, running the race on Saturday. Sadly, he won't. And I don't think he's going to win the race he's in today, the Betway Bow.
Right. Okay, John. Well, enjoy the racing today. Enjoy the golf. We'll chat to you again tomorrow.
Okay, guys. Thanks so much. Take care.
John Duggan there with us at 8:45 on this Thursday morning. Andy Friend is on standby. We'll get to him in just a moment. But here's what we've got on OTB Sports Radio today from 1 o'clock. We've got the Women's Six Nations show that is live, and it will be throughout this year's Six Nations. History of Sport is coming your way at 3 o'clock. And then from 4 p.m. is a retro panel on addiction in sport with John Lennon, Dr. Garrett McGovern and Declan Lynch. Then from 6 o'clock, Jerry Eisenberg talking about Muhammad Ali is up. Then 7 o'clock, Off the Ball is live tonight, as it is every weekday evening. Brian O'Driscoll and John Giles are going to join Adrian Barry, who's in the hot seat. And we'll have the football show and everything, of course, from day one of the Masters. And what a first day it promises to be at Augusta National. We're going to be joined by Joe Molloy a little bit later on, who is going to give us our final preview of the Masters. I know that there's been a lot of Jordan Spieth love on Golf Weekly over the last few months, really. The comeback of Spieth has been topic on that podcast for as long as mankind has been alive, and he finally delivered on his comeback last weekend. So you can just imagine Joe's excitement when we get to him after 9 o'clock this morning. Of course, you can check out Golf Weekly on Patreon. That's where you'll get their full podcast and all their exciting build-up for the week ahead. As you can see, you can select your membership level there on Patreon, and you can become an official friend of the pod. If you're just joining us this morning, the main story really is in the Irish Independent. GAA vowed to investigate claims of Farney breach. Footage appears to show Monaghan senior footballers training together at the end of last month, and Garda probe into video of Monaghan GAA training session is the front of the Irish Independent. And I'm delighted to say we can now welcome Connacht head coach Andy Friend to the show. Andy, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. So how have you been over the last couple of days? What is the work that is involved after a pretty disappointing defeat in the Challenge Cup? Is it a reflection? Is it business as usual? How have you approached those last few days?
A lot of reflection. It is disappointing. We've actually given the players the week off because, as we know, unfortunately, we don't have anything to play for this weekend. We do have an Eagles game, but the thought process going to that Leicester game was we weren't going to be losing it, so we hadn't planned for not losing it. But we have this coming weekend off. We have the following weekend off, and then we head into the Rainbow Cup. So there's a real sense of disappointment, though. An opportunity lost, and they're the things that really hurt you, mate, because when do you get the next one? You don't know when you're going to get the next one, and to have turned up to Welford Road not in our best emotional state is really disappointing. Something we're going to have to live with.
How do you analyse that in a way that isn't counterproductive? Like I assume that sometimes you can get carried away with a defeat as you can with a victory. How do you try and get that balance right in the aftermath of a significant defeat?
Well, I think it's about being honest with it. You can't hide it. At the same time, I said it's not the end of the world. We're human beings and things like that happen. But it's how do we learn from it? I think that's the most important thing. And we've had a lot of learning occasions during the course of this year. We've had a lot of positivity around this year as well. So it's trying to identify or point out the areas that we've been really good. Identify and point out the areas where we need to continue to improve to make sure we don't fall into those sort of holes again. But also then, pick people up and say, we've still got a bit to play for. We've still got 6 games to go at the end of this season, We've got to make sure we finish the season on a high. So I think the other thing is again, just the realisation that there's a lot of fatigue. There's a lot of fatigue in our squad. We've been going for 9 months now. By the time we finish, which, the final of the Rainbow Cup is on the 19th of June, we started training on the 29th of June. So we're going to be 355 days where we've been together, living like everyone else has in lockdown, but actually really restricted, because one of the things we said at the start of the year was we wanted to be the fittest, healthiest squad. Yes, we've had incidences of COVID, but we've had no spread throughout the group. We've had no games cancelled because of COVID. We've managed to fulfil all of our fixtures. We've had probably the second best year we've ever had in Pro 14, which has been a plus. But then you get a disappointment like the weekend. So it's trying to get the balance of all of that. And so it's not the end of the world, as I said, but we've got a few things to work on.
Yeah, for sure. Everything, I think, is put in perspective a little bit over the last 12 months. Just on the particular opposition that you played last weekend, I know there was a lot made of the fact that Connacht have struggled against teams from England over the past couple of years. Have you been able to put your finger on why that is, or is that just a coincidence?
We play very different styles of rugby. The Premiership is, respectfully, it's probably a more confrontational style of game. They're bigger men. There's a lot of impact in both tackles and when they carry the football. Whereas Pro 14 tends to be a little bit more open, in my view, anyway. And certainly against a side like Leicester, that's what we found the other night. And listen, certainly it wasn't their best side either. That was the other thing that hurt. They put a lot of young blokes out there, but they had a want and a desire to get that result probably more than we did, and that's something that hurt. But I think on the whole, Pro 14 rugby, the style of game that's played there is probably a little bit more open, in my view, whereas the Premiership rugby is still open, but there's a bit more confrontation.
That's interesting, because it sort of mirrors maybe the national conversation about Ireland versus England as well. Now, I know this year's Six Nations, it was a positive outcome for Ireland against England, but there was definitely a sense in 2019 and 2020 that England had an ability to overpower Ireland, and maybe Saracens managed to do that against Leinster on those last two occasions in the Champions Cup as well. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I am. And we actually said it at half-time in that Leicester game. I said, fellas, we're trying to win an arm wrestle, which they got bigger arms, so we're mad to stay in the arm wrestle. So what we tried to do in the second half, and it did start to work for us, we started to play with a bit more tempo, and we had a penalty. We weren't going to stop. We weren't going to kick to the corner and give them the maul that they're very good at defending. So we started a quick tap and play, and we started to try and avoid rucks and go through rucks, and we got ourselves back into winning contention on two different occasions. By doing that, we weren't good enough to finish it off, but by simply changing our focus when we went into that second half, I felt we got a lot more pay out of that. And I think, again, you've got to play to your style, but at the same time, you've got to try and take away from an opposition's strength. And their strength is definitely, the close quarter stuff. So try not to give them that.
Andy, I guess a lot was made this week of the Munster signing of Jason Jenkins, and I know the promotion of academy players is not something that can be levelled at you, that you haven't promoted enough. You've certainly promoted lots of academy players to the Connacht first team. I just want to get your take on people saying that maybe, is it sending the wrong message, prioritising signing foreign players over academy progression at the moment, or is it just about finding the right balance?
Yeah, I think every coach has got his own thoughts on what he needs in his team. I think from a Connacht perspective, again, this year we've blooded 15 new players now. 8 of those are academy boys, and we had 7 new signings. So, we still got freshness coming through. I think the pathway for players and coaches is really important in any program. It's something I really believe in, and as you've seen there, like over the last, since I've been here anyway, we will have had over 20 players that we've brought through the academy and given caps to, and I think the players have got to see, young blokes have got to see that. They've got to see that if you stay at Connacht, for example, that there is an opportunity for you. And I think we've provided that. In terms of what other coaches see and what other coaches think, that's really up to them. But from a Connacht point of view, it's really important. You will have also seen that we're bringing 2 young academy coaches through as well. So I think for coaches as well, there needs to be a pathway. And I work very, very closely with Eric Elwood, who leads our academy. I think there's a really healthy status there from academy into pro world at Connacht Rugby.
Andy, a lot was made of some of Ronan O'Gara's comments after his La Rochelle side beat Gloucester last weekend, and a lot of people getting excited maybe about the future of Ronan O'Gara and maybe bringing some of that coaching expertise back to Ireland. And he spoke about the difference in southern and northern hemisphere rugby. He said big emphasis in the northern hemisphere on the ruck. But what I learned from my time with the Crusaders is you need to keep the ball alive, and he put this emphasis on keep the ball alive, KBA. You'll have to contend with the southern hemisphere teams a bit in the upcoming Rainbow Cup, but as someone from Australia, like, how would you define, I guess, the main differences between rugby north and south?
Yeah, I listened to that interview, and it was a very good interview, and he made a lot of sense. He made sense, to a brand of rugby that I grew up with. I think the most difficult thing to implement that in the northern hemisphere is often the weather, and people lose sight of that. We actually come into a period now where you can play a bit more ball in hand stuff, and you can actually keep KBA. You can keep that ball alive. So, but there's chunks of the season there where it's very, very difficult to do that because, and I'll talk about Galway. We've often got wind and rain and it's howling. Like, it amazes me the skill level of our blokes that they can do some of the things that they do in the conditions that we play in. So conditions definitely have an impact, and because rugby's played now over 9 months of the season. Probably half of those are going to be in conditions that it makes it very, very difficult. So you've got to have an extraordinary skill set to be able to then pick up or change your style when the weather gets good. So I don't disagree with that philosophy. In fact, that's the way I said I was brought up playing rugby and coaching rugby. It is tricky to do in the Northern Hemisphere for a full season. So you've got to sort of be master of both if you can.
Is that possible? Because that was certainly one of the things that came out of maybe the Munster-Toulouse game at the weekend as well, was maybe a proper sunshine game of rugby breaking out. And why wasn't the Pro 14 version of this showing this all season long? But as you say, it's a completely different ball game for the vast majority of the entire rugby year.
Yeah, correct. And I mean, even the afternoon games, as players, as coaches, we love it. We love it, but majority of our games are 7:45 in the evening, and it's normally on a winter's evening where it's bloody cold and it's either piss and wind and rain, and you can't do anything. So, all of a sudden you get a sunny Saturday afternoon or a sunny Sunday afternoon, whether it be in Munster or whether it be in the south of France. And funnily enough, people want to play, and it's great. Not too dissimilar to the game we had against the Scarlets. We turned up at Park the Scarlets, 3 weeks ago. As they said on the night, geez, it's never like this. We had a still night, not a breath of wind, not a drop of rain, and 2 teams played. We went out and played. Now we lost that game, but there were over 70 points scored out there, and players want to play that way. But the weather, the conditions definitely work against you to play that style. So I think that again the key is as and for myself as a head coach and all of us as coaches, to try and get the balance if you can, where when you can play, when you can't play, be smart with it. But I can tell you now, players love playing rugby that way. They love, turn on the rugby Aotearoa. Like, it's brilliant to watch. Any of those Kiwi teams and the Australian teams now are starting to play some better football. But it's great to play. It's great to watch. And if we had the conditions, I reckon we'd do it.
We were speaking to Rassi Erasmus on the show earlier this week, Andy, and he was making the point that one of the things that will hold Ireland back, apart from the weather, is the fact that the playing pool is just so small that you compare it to South Africa, and really it's unfair to think that Ireland can compete consistently to the level that South Africa do. From your own perspective, I get the sense that trying to widen that player pool is something you've tried to implement at Connacht. I know 30% of your players need to be from Connacht. I assume that helps to widen that base a little bit, and it does broaden the appeal and the possibilities for a team like Connacht.
Yeah, listen, I think there's some amazing talent in this country. I really do. I think one of the issues with it's pretty much centred around 1 or 2 hubs, and it's how do you get the best. Like, let's just say every squad's got 40 players. Let's say they've got 50 players. So if in a pro squad now there's 50 players, so I don't think anyone has 50 signed up players, but if you've got 45 players and 5 academy players. If the best 50 players are playing in each province, if the best 200 players are signed up into those things, you've got a hell of a playing pool there now. And I think what happens at the moment, unfortunately, because a lot of the playing pool happens, or a lot of the education of young players predominantly happens up in Dublin. And those young fellas, I get it. I get the reason they want to stay there. They want to play for Leinster, and so they should. But if you're sitting third or fourth in an academy position there, and there's an opportunity to be first or second somewhere else, to me it makes good sense to move there and try and play that. At the end of the day, though, the player has to want to do it. Okay, now if the player doesn't want to do it, well, it's never going to work for you. So part of it is trying to say to the player, rugby's about getting opportunity, and the more you play the game, the better you're going to be. From a Connacht point of view, we would love to have 100% Connacht players, and there's a lot of good work again through the pathway systems that Mervyn Murphy and Eric Earl are putting in place at the moment, where we're trying to get more people playing the game. But probably over the next 5-10 years, we're going to see that start to come through. At the minute, though, our playing pool is reasonably limited. We've got some really good young fellas coming through at the minute, but we don't have some of the depth and breadth of other places. So whilst we want to keep that 30% and actually grow that, if we could do 100%, that would be brilliant. The more we can try and shift players who are sitting third, fourth choice somewhere else and offer them an opportunity, the better it would be for us. So I think there's great depth. As I said, there's great depth in Ireland. It's just how do you get that depth playing the game.
On that point that you make there about the Dublin schools, like that is a really interesting one, because the pressure's on you, I guess, to win now. I mean, it's all well and good implementing structures for 5-10 years for Connacht, but I guess you need to win now, and it is clear that the pathways in Leinster and in Dublin in particular, due to the private schools, are just in finer fettle than everywhere else in Ireland at the moment. It is an unbelievable conveyor belt of talent that is coming through. Is there ever a sense, from what you've seen living in Ireland so far, that there will be other parts of the country that can compete with that maybe even in Munster, Ulster and Connacht there will be a pathway that is as strong as the Leinster school system?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the eternal optimist too. So I do believe that people are seeing that and understand, certainly in the Connacht area, that the better coaches we get out there in junior rugby programs and in schools, the better product we're going to get coming through. So there's a big focus on that. I know you look at Munster at the moment, and even Ulster, some of their young academy talent that's coming through is phenomenal. You just look at the last few years of under 26 nations. Ireland's done very, very well. So there is talent coming through. A lot of it is based up there in Dublin, but there's a fair spread now. So I think my role as a head coach, I think everyone's role as a head coach, yes, you've got to win now, but you've also got to be building sustainability for the future. And that's something that I truly believe in. I think if I can leave, when I do leave Connacht Rugby, if I can leave it in a better place than when I got there, and knowing that the steps are in progress for it to keep going forward, then it's been a really successful period of my life and my time, and something I'd be very proud of. So that's what I'm working towards doing. And we get great support from Willie Ruan and the board. They've got a long-term vision for it too, and everything's zoned in the right way to continue to make Connacht a very, very strong province in the professional game as well as the community game. And I think that's really important too.
Andy, can I just ask you briefly? I remember last year on the show you were speaking about how lockdown has kind of taught us to manage our time more effectively, not just with team meetings, but with getting family time back and that sort of thing. And, a lot of people have been more active than ever, I guess, recently, getting back in touch with nature and their local area. I know you're someone who's been fairly active on the mountain bike as well, always active, not just with the coaching, but with your hobbies. How have you found the last couple of months? Have you still been cycling, keeping busy on that front?
Well, unfortunately, mate, I ruptured my quad tendon about 6 weeks ago. So right. I got off the crutches 3 days ago, and I got out of the brace 3 days ago. And it is killing me that I can't walk, and it's killing me I can't be on the bike. So I'm not a great advocate of getting outdoors in these last 6 weeks. But the good news is the quad tendon's coming on, and the best news is my surgeon said to me, the best thing for it, friend, is going to be cycling. So when I can actually get my knee around a 90-degree turn or 180-degree turn, I'll be back on that bike. I've been keeping myself active. Otherwise, I've got calluses on my hands because I just made sure I kept on the crutches and I was moving as quickly as I could or as much as I could on that thing. But yeah, I love it. I think Ireland's brilliant too, as a place to explore, and where we are here in Connacht, certainly around the Connemara. There's just some brilliant spots. So I'm busting to get back out there and do a bit more of that.
How did you injure yourself?
It's a really bad story, but it was half time in the Cardiff game, and I was walking back up to the coach's box. Somehow my foot slipped out from underneath me. I went to capture it, and my tendon just went snap. So I sort of ended up on the ground in a bit of a pile. Managed to get myself up to the coach's box. Managed to watch the second half, and then got handed a pair of crutches. Came into the room to sing the song with the boys and to tell them how well they'd done. But typically, what happens in rugby when anyone's copped an injury, people just laugh their heads off. So I walked in with my crutches, going, "Well done, fellas." Everyone's like, "What have you done, friendy?" I said, "Don't worry about it, but let's sing the song." And sang the song, and I knew as soon as I'd done something pretty serious. So I had surgery for 4 or 5 days after, and it's been a slow progress back.
Oh, well, glad to hear you're on the right track, and that really is a statement of Northern Hemisphere coaching, that the coaches get worse injuries than the players.
It's funny because when I was up at Santry and my surgeon, Professor Carl Moore, and he said to me, he said, "Listen, fair play to you," he said, "we get a lot of your players through, but we haven't had a coach who actually wants to put himself what the players are going through, and just to see how to get back from an injury." And that's what I keep saying to the players, fellas, I just want to see every angle of this program and make sure it's right. So I can tell you, our physios, the service we get, they're pretty damn good, I can tell you that.
Yeah, they're pretty good at their job, I'd imagine. Andy Friend, it's been great chatting to you. Always great to have you on the show. Thanks a million.
Good on you, fellas. Appreciate the chat.
Cheers. Head coach of Connacht, Andy Friend there. It is 9:07 on this Thursday morning. You're watching OTB AM, and still plenty to come before we wrap up this hour. We've got the OTB TV picks with Sue. We're hearing from Ronan O'Gara, and up next it is star of Golf Weekly Joe Molloy, who is previewing day one of the Masters.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
This is OTB Sports Radio.
For Brady, in American football, it is incredibly specific, and very, very few people get to hit him. He should be in an armchair ride. He runs on, he runs off. It's about having a really good arm. Rugby is multidiscipline. They call him a quarterback. That's lazy journalism in my view. Johnny is our best out half.
Off the Ball, Saturdays from 1 on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
Tom Watson, you're welcome to Golf Weekly.
Hey, this is going to be fun.
Very happy to say European captain and, of course, 3-time major winner Padraig Carrington joins us.
Today's special guest on Golf Weekly is Lee Westwood.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm honoured and delighted.
Let's bring in Paul McGinley, who joins us now. Paul, you're very welcome.
Shane Lowry, how are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks, yeah. Well, I'm as good as I can be.
The biggest names in golf and Ireland's best golf podcast, Golf Weekly, now exclusively available on Patreon. Go to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly to sign up now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're welcome back. It is 9:08 on this Thursday morning. The Masters tees off later today, and there is still plenty of time to get in the mood and get some top quality insight ahead of it. And where else to get that other than Golf Weekly? Over there already is a full tournament preview of Paul McGinley. They've already recorded their weekly podcast where they dig through all of the pre-tournament press conferences, and Phil Mickelson's epic Pavlova story. Still to come this week is their Sunday watch-along party, where they'll be joined by none other than Conor Moore and on-tour pro Troy Merritt. And if that wasn't enough for you, they'll also have a special Monday review pod. So there's loads of great stuff there over on the Golf Weekly Patreon account. Go on to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly. Joe Molloy, good morning.
It was an epic Pavlova story, I thought. Hello.
Yeah, the less said about that Pavlova story, the better. I think, to be honest.
Well, Phil Mickelson has one rule with his stories, and it's that Phil has to look like the smartest person in the room at the end of those stories. So, I mean, he sticks rigidly to the rules.
Did I see somewhere he's getting advice from Condoleezza Rice ahead of... Oh, no, he's just joined forces in some aspect.
Yeah, she is a member of Augusta, of course.
Yeah.
So, you know.
That's what I thought of
respects game.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, Golf Weekly has certainly respected Jordan Spieth for quite some time. You boys have been charting the comeback more than anybody I've ever seen. Like, if he's a future friend of the pod, I think that will be a career highlight for all of you. Why so much love for Jordan Spieth, and why does it seem like this is almost just on a level below your love for Tiger and his comeback?
Yeah, future lover of the pod, we hope.
Yeah,
I think. There's just something about him. He's box office. I think the wider sports public see him as a pretty wholesome, run-of-the-mill, boring fella. And I sort of get that. I don't know what you think about him, if you're that fascinated by him, I suppose. I understand if, you take the view I've just outlined. But he sort of emerged as a superstar kid. He's still very young. And you looked at his game and it was confusing initially. People couldn't work out how he won. I mean, of course, he was phenomenal on the greens, but he was greater than the sum of his parts. We had a text into Off the Ball a couple of weeks ago describing him as Seabiscuit. Like, there was a bit of that, He's not scary, and yet when he's out there, I think it's his brain combined, his personality. He is scary, and in no time he won 3 majors. He almost won, like, the Grand Slam. At St Andrews in 2015, it was remarkable. He just does crazy things, both in a good way and in a bad way. His game is very, very volatile. It's still a bit volatile off the tee, and then he produces miracle shots, lots of miracle putts. He's an artist. The way he won the Open in 2017, his last big win before Sunday just gone. I mean, the 13th hole where he spent, 10, 13 minutes and ended up in the driving range, hitting his shot and making one of the greatest bogeys of all time, and then holding these monster putts and breaking Matt Kuchar's heart. It was electric. It was electric. And so all of that combined, plus he's a brilliant interviewee, so smart, so reflective, just the kind of the full package. But like, there's a volatility to his play, there's an artistic streak to his play, and there's a degree whereby he shouldn't be able to beat a lot of the players around him. I mean, he's not scary good at anything, the putter aside. But then his irons are sneaky good, like his irons are phenomenal as well. But there's just a kind of it's a weird thing to say about, like, the guy all the players nickname on tour the Golden Child, but there is kind of an underdog quality to how he's doing it,
Like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it did seem that the beginning of Jordan Spieth's, I guess, his journey back to the pack a little bit was when his putter started to go cold. I remember maybe it was you guys saying at the time, that putter isn't looking maybe as hot as it once was, and that's when people started to realise things weren't going so well. Is he back at that level with the putter in hand?
Oh, no. I don't think he is. I mean, the level he was at was nuts.
Yeah.
Like, it was insane. I don't know what voodoo was going on. I don't know what magic was going on. I've never seen anything like it. I just, like, even Tiger, I just don't think we'll ever see anything like it again. Now, maybe he'll have those streaky moments again. But, like, he's still bloody good. And when he gets in the mood, and Augusta greens put him in the mood, he is phenomenal. And, he said this week, he was asked, why are you so good at Augusta? And the first thing he mentioned was the touch putting. And I know you, John, on earlier on, he was talking about those slopey greens. I mean, we can't overestimate them. And with the TV coverage now, nobody needs to tell us anymore how hilly it is. I think the TV coverage kind of captures that pretty well. And you see the slopes in the green, and they're running extremely fast this week. So he said, touch putting, those slopes excite him. Like, they would terrify us, you know what I mean? And with him, they excite him and they bring out the best in him. And I think with Augusta generally, he has this wonderful relationship with Augusta. His record is phenomenal there. Like, his debut was in 2014. He finished second. 2015, he was wire-to-wire winner. It was amazing. And 2016, he was 5 shots up and gave those 5 shots away in 2 holes, the famous 12th when he went into the water twice and Danny Willett pounced. So I sort of feel like Spieth's won the Masters 3 times, even though it's just once. And when he gets there, and he's talked about this himself, and you can imagine this a little bit, even at our rank bad level at any sport. He says, like, the canvas kind of dictates what he does. So his body almost reacts to the various slopes he's on or the topography. His focus becomes very external. I think his mind quietens down in a good way. Whereas at their worst, golfers are very internal and they're thinking about technique and they're fidgety and what's my left shoulder doing and how's my takeaway. I feel when he's at Augusta, he's not in that headspace. I feel like everything the challenge, the Alistair Mackenzie challenge presents to him just excites him and a bit of artistry comes out. So the fact that he's back is just amazing. Like, he's been so in the doldrums. I mean, it's been so bad. So 83 starts, no win since 17. And it's relatively recent, the comeback is the only kind of question mark at the back of my mind. I mean, look, he's had 4 top 10s and a win in his last 7. 4 top 10s and a win in his last 7. So this is more than a flash in the pan. But like, you go back to last September, his record of tournaments was miscut, 38, 41st, miscut. Then at the Masters in November, he was 46th. Then January 31st, not that long ago, missed cut at the Farmers. He was 92nd in the world on the 31st of January and not looking good. And then a week later at the Phoenix Open, like a phoenix from the flame zone,
Too easy.
out of nowhere, he finished tied 4th, 54-hole leader. Week later, Pebble Beach, 3rd. Week later, Genesis 15th. We thought, okay, something happened here. And then March 7th, Arnold Palmer finished 4th. And last week, obviously, won. So that recent form, the fact that he won on Sunday just gone, plus the Masters, all of that is brewing and giving us a real sense that this guy is ready to do something. So it's exciting. He's just interesting to me on many levels. I don't know what you think as a kind of more casual observer. His speech is kind of dull, wholesome. I don't really see the point kind of character.
Not at all. No, I've been banging the drum that this generation of golfers are criminally underrated when it comes to how interesting they are. I know Shane's going to come in on Bryson in just a moment, but I'm a massive Koepka fan. Justin Thomas is somebody I've warmed to greatly over the last couple of years. I thought he was a bit of a spoiled child when he first came on tour, and he's actually become really likeable over the last couple of years. And Spieth was the same. I think as well, we kind of view this from the prism of Rory McIlroy, that we're like, this is the Irish boy who's going to dominate the world. The cheek of those American college kids to come along and be better than him. So I like, that's certainly maybe why at the start I was like, I'm not having the Spieth kid, but no, I'm loving the comeback as well. I was just interested in the kind of the magnitude of Golf Weekly and their love for him and why that was. But
never ending. I don't know. It wasn't an agreed policy.
Yeah,
it just it turned out we all loved him as individuals, and we came together. And
we're all borderline obsessed with Bryson DeChambeau as well, Joe. Whether you love him or hate him, I guess. And I heard yourself and Dermot Gillette talking about him last night, and this mystical secret club that he has in his locker this week. And I think Dermot suggested maybe it's just something like a wedge, but he was quoted this week talking about it, saying this has been a few years in the making. I won't go into specifics. I'm very excited for it. There's some tremendous benefits to it. Is this mind games from Bryson? Is he just trying to wind people up? We know he gets in people's heads. He got in Rory's head with the distance off the tee. So, like, is he just having us all on here?
No, I don't think so, to be fair. I think there probably is something. I just think he's more excited about it than he should be, really. I read it was some kind of driver which will limit the volatility of his misses when he has a strike off the toe. Right. So look, it's something which he'll be very excited about. But he is like a guy who puts all his golf balls in Epsom salts to make sure they're of the proper, I don't know what, So look, he's going to be excited about a new club. I wouldn't read too much into that. I mean, I'd read plenty into what Bryson's doing, but less so into the club.
Is he a worthy favourite?
I'm not as sure. Like, yes, he is. Look, he has to be, because what he's done with his long game, and he's hitting the ball a gazillion miles, and he won the US Open, so he's proven he can do it in a major now. And he won just a couple of weeks ago, so he's in good form. Geez, he really made a mess of it in November, though. Like, he really did make a mess. I've listened to a lot of stuff, podcasts and previews, as you can imagine, lads. And, I'm hearing a lot of people saying, oh, his strategy came unstuck at Augusta and he made a, like, if you think back to the Thursday at Augusta, so he played the 10th and started brilliantly, but then the 11th, like, he snap hooked it. And he was just all over the shop. So I don't really know if his strategy came unstuck. I mean, no matter what your strategy is, if you're just like swiping it left and swiping it right and putting in the trees straight away, there's no strategy that can work there. Now, that said, he said he was very ill at Augusta last November, and it turns out it was his breathing. He's done all the tests. He had MRI, went to an inner ear doctor, eye pressure, ear pressure, did sinus tests, ultrasound on his heart, ultrasound on his neck to check blood flow, you name it, he did it. And it turned out his oxygen levels were low and he wasn't breathing properly. So, like, he was dizzy and he was blading the ball across the green and it was a complete mess. He was unlucky. When he lost a ball on the third, it just plugged and disappeared. The drivable par four, which I think he's going to try and drive again. That's the only slight worry, that he is, robot compared to Spieth, and Augusta tends to be more about artistic flavour. So I'm curious to see. Look, I can't wait to watch his first round today, right? I want to see, because he didn't wow us the way it was billed last November, Shane. Last November going into it, there were all these like graphics in the newspaper, with, well, here's the course. He's going to take this line there. He's going to take that line there. He's going to drive it over those trees. You're going to see him in spots you've never seen anyone in the history of Augusta. And that didn't really happen. He played with John Rahm, and there were very few wow moments. Like, he was like 5 yards ahead of Rahm all day, and I kind of thought, well, what's all the hype about? But he did find, like, he blasted the ball into trees a lot. And at Augusta, you're kind of in trouble there in that you can't run it up to the green. Like at the US Open, when he was in trouble, he just like bashed it out along the ground and it ran up and settled on the green. Whereas Augusta, you need to land in these spots on these greens. That's why it's a second shot golf course. So I'm curious to see today, what I'm going to look at for in the first round is he going to pick and choose his moments more off the tee? So certain holes, green light, go for it. And then I'm looking for, if he's going to win, for him to dial it back a bit in certain holes, to play clever. And then let's see how he is around the greens. He's never done well on the greens there is the only other concern, and that's a big enough concern. Yeah. Augusta doesn't let you use those green books that they all have now for all the other tournaments, and they're very detailed and very scientific. So you can imagine they appeal to his mind, and he does rely on them. So I wonder how big a crush that is for him. So yes, he is worthy favourite for sure, because the way he's transformed his game. But from the point of view of strategy, and even to a lesser extent, what he does in the greens and just the artistry required, even though he's a brilliant chipper, there's a question mark. There is a question mark, because he hasn't knocked the lights out previously at Augusta, but this is a different DeChambeau. So it's really interesting. Like, he's a really interesting favourite for sure.
Joe, we're almost out of time, but
sure.
Rory McIlroy, I guess we've almost been catfished by him at times over the last few years, where it's like, will this guy show up or not? Is Pete Cowan the silver bullet? It seems like there's been a lot of potential silver bullets over the last little while. Yeah, there haven't there? There's always there's a lot of that with Rory, to be fair. We'll find out. I think it's been a really bad slump for him. Like, he's gone from first in the world to 12th, pre-pandemic first, now 12th. Like, the issue with Rory are the same issues we might have talked about in November, I think, Eoin. The putting, there's a question mark. Like, his stats for this year, he is the 104th best putter on tour. He, approaching to the green, as I said, it's a second shot golf course. He's 80th. 80th's really not going to get it done, and his wedges have too often let him down. He spoke yesterday in his press conference about trying to be a more controlled golfer and taking the big numbers out, and I think that would really benefit him, because he so often shoots himself in the foot for all his talent with these crazy holes from time to time. The thing with Cowan, look, this is the breaking of a habit of a lifetime for McIlroy to get a new coach on board, so it's a big deal, and it does suggest a certain admission on his part that he needs to change something up quite seriously. Cowan is an interesting character, world-famous coach, as good as anyone out there, if not the best, at the moment. Gruff Yorkshireman. Doesn't take a salary, takes a percentage of your winnings. That's how confident this guy is. I won't take a salary, I'll take 4% of your winnings. And in certain instances, some players have had to come back and say, this deal actually doesn't work out for me. Can we change? Can we go to flat salary? So look, the thing about Cowan is he doesn't need Rory. So, and to be fair to the rest of his team, this will sound like I'm having a real pop at them. I'm not. But unlike the rest of his team, who are very much beholden to Rory, and Rory he's an alpha, and I think he has designed that architecture around him where he is very much the alpha. Cowan will come in and he'll say, look, I don't really care if I work for you in a year or not, but here's what I think, here's what you need to do. And, this is the story. I'm not going to say what you want me to say here. That could be really good for him. So that strength of mind that Cowan has, and the fact that he's not reliant on Rory, means Rory will get it straight, and that could be a really good thing for him from an outside voice. So the question is, I suppose, and we don't know the answer, how quickly can those changes manifest? And
I don't know. And nobody knows what to expect from Rory. It could be really bad. He could start off tentative, realise 3-4 holes in, geez, this new swing thought I have really works, and feeling confident. And by the 18th he could be showing off. That's how good he is. That if he gets a good feeling, he could take off. And he's the kind of putter as well where he can have a streaky week because he just feels good about life, and confidence is an amazing thing. So the answer in Rory is all or nothing, Owen. I really don't know. I'm just so interested to see. Obviously he's going for the Grand Slam, which is a humongous deal.
Joe, in a word, who's pulling on the green jacket on Sunday night?
If I had to pick one, I would say Justin Thomas.
Right. A sound pick. All the good stuff. Yeah. All the reasons for the Justin Thomas pick, of course, over on Golf Weekly. Joe, enjoy the next couple of days. I'm sure this is the highlight of your year. I hope it's a good one for you.
My life. Thank you.
Joe Molloy, thanks a million. Let's remind you as well of the fact that the Masters does, of course, tee off later today, and still plenty of time to get in the mood and get some top quality insight ahead of it. Where else to get it other than Golf Weekly? So over there's already a full tournament preview with Paul McGinley. They've already recorded their weekly podcast where they dig through all of the pre-tournament press conferences and Phil Mickelson's Pavlova story. Still to come is their Sunday watch-along party, and they're going to be joined by Conor Moore for that, of Conor Sketches fame, and on-tour pro Troy Merritt. If that wasn't enough for you, they also have a special Monday review pod. That's all over on the Golf Weekly Patreon account, and you can get that on otbsports.com/Golf Weekly. Right, it is time to turn our attention to television. Not that there's going to be golf or anything else on this weekend to keep everybody occupied. Sue Murphy, if you don't like golf, what are we looking at?
I mean, everyone's going to be watching the golf. The big thing that I'm talking about is I'm slightly obsessed with it. I actually started talking about this morning with my husband again, and he went, please stop talking about this show. So I'm slightly obsessed. It's them. It's going to be out tomorrow on Amazon Prime, and it's 10 episodes. And if you're into horror, then you're going to absolutely love this. But still, I think I don't know if you saw Get Out a couple of years ago that was Oscar nominated. It's very much in that kind of vein. It's a family, black family that moved to Compton, and they in a very white neighborhood, and they're just basically trying to set up their life. They're two young girls. They had a very horrible thing happen to them when they were in the South, and they wanted to try and just build their new life and get away from all of that. They have the horror of the white community that is on their doorstep, literally on their doorstep. I mean, this woman across the road pulls up a table and gets all of the women in the neighborhood to all play their radios to try and just get her out of her house. And it just escalates and gets more and more violent. That's all happening outside their house. And then in their house is haunted by something that's in the basement. So you have this brilliant thing with the real horror that's happening outside their door, where their girls are the only black girls in the school, where their husband is the only black man who works in that engineering department, and just the feeling of them being the other. And then there's the horrible thing that's happening in the basement. It is so good. And I got really, so I was watching it in headphones with the Liverpool match in the background the other night, and I genuinely kept taking out the headphones because I was getting so scared. I was just like, I can't do this. But there's a couple of jumps in the first episode that are brilliant. But the storyline and the characters and the plot, everything is just so good about this.
There's no such thing as a good jump scare, Sue, in my opinion. So Get Out, I would say, is more edging towards psychological thriller rather than horror, and for that reason, I saw Get Out because I'd asked a million different people, is this how horrifying is this? This sounds like it might be a level above Get Out in terms of the horror aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. Right. It is the kind of, I always think old school horror, because it's the bit where your one who's showing them the house brings them up to the basement. She's like, you're really lucky, all these houses don't have basements. And I'm like, great, a basement, nothing's going to happen down there. But so you do have that old school kind of jump horror thing. But honest to God, the horror of, she is putting books on a shelf and she looks out her window and about 30 women are sitting at tables outside her door with radios on, trying to drive her mad. And you're like, what is wrong with these people? It's just, it's actually very upsetting. There's a bit at the first few minutes, she's with her young baby, who's a boy. And this kind of thing is told in flashback throughout the episode and throughout the series. Actually, I'm on the third episode now. But you never see that boy again. So something awful has happened. And it's just, it's very it really struck a chord with me. It kept me up that night because I was so bloody scared. And then the whole stuff about like the racism really affected me. It, like, somebody described this as like they felt rattled, and that's exactly. And I mean, that is just really good. Like, if something just shakes you, like, it's really good.
I think this is the highest recommendation we've ever got from you, Sue. I think that, like, this sounds amazing. So it's out on Amazon Prime, and it is out this Friday. Next up, we're going to Sky and Now TV.
Oh yeah. Now this is a little bit depressing. So I know this much is true, and this is kind of one that was always in the background of, you know, all the big series that they've been talking around the Golden Globes and stuff. Like, I mean, The Crown is just sweeping everything every time it goes into an award ceremony, but this one's always been kind of lurking in the background. And Ruffalo picked up the SAG Award last week for this, and I was like, okay, I really have to check this out, because obviously he's brilliant in it, because he picked up the Golden Globe, he picked up the Emmy. He plays twins in it, Dominic and Thomas. Thomas is schizophrenic. He has really awful mental health issues. He's on a lot of medication, but when every now and again he just has a bit of a blip and things go wrong for him. His mother has died from breast cancer. They have a stepfather who was very abusive when they were younger, and his wife has left him. So you're just like, this is a lot to take in the first episode. But what is brilliant about it is Ruffalo's performance as the twins. He is he just has a slight accent change when he plays Dominic, and Thomas is just a little bit more slumped and like weight of the world on his shoulders, and it's unbelievable. Like, I can't imagine the amount of work that goes into playing two different characters in the same series. It's just mind-blowing. So it's worth it for Ruffalo's performance, but a bit of a health warning. Like, the end of the first episode is very distressing, because the brother, in the first few minutes of the episode, the brother goes into a library with a huge knife and decides he's going to cut his hand off. And he decides that this is his sacrifice. So he's taken into custody. He ends up in another hospital that's not the hospital he's meant to be in. And his brother is trying to get him out. And it is very, very distressing. Right. And when the credits rolled, I just went, I don't think I can watch another episode of this right now. Okay. So very, very good. Really good. But honestly, just be prepared for how depressing it is. It is very depressing.
Bit of a hard watch. Next up, and I know Shane Hannon's very excited about this. What have we potentially missed? You might have missed a lot here, which just rolls off the tongue. What is it this week?
My octopus teacher. And can I just say, I was telling my husband about this, and he came into the room when I was watching it, and he was like, I thought you were talking about an animation. This is a real life man who's friends with an octopus. And I was like, yes. So there's this filmmaker, Craig Forrester, he has a bit of a breakdown at the start of the documentary, decides he doesn't want to film anymore, couldn't go into an edit suite, and decides he's just going to connect with the ocean and go back to nature. But he finds an octopus and ends up visiting that same octopus for the next 304 days in the same place, and records everything about that octopus life. And it's actually like, it sounds like the maddest thing in the world, because honestly, when I read it, I was like, what? And then there's like some of the scenes you're like, oh, that's so lovely, they're friends. And it's just very hard to dislike. Like, I know Shane's obsessed with it as well. I just think it's so good.
What's so good about it, Shane?
I think, like, Sue summed it up quite perfectly in our email thread before we came on air. She said, I never thought I could feel this way about an octopus I've never met. And, like, I haven't met many octopuses in my time, but, like, this one I just fell for. This was... It's his relationship between the octopus, and, like, there's even a moment in the film where, you know, this pajama shark attacks the octopus. Pajama sharks, they sound friendly, like a slumber party shark, but they're not friendly. Certainly not to octopuses. But it's the octopus loses an arm in this incident and retreats to her den to recover, and then slowly regenerates the arm over, I think it's a period of maybe 3 months. So it's like a really slow version of James Franco in 127 hours if James Franco was an octopus. But it's really, really, you can't take your eyes off it. I mean, there'll be tears as well. There are some deeper meanings behind it. I think it was filmed maybe 11 years ago. It was filmed in 2010. So it's just this beautiful relationship between a man and an octopus. And even when I was reading the premise of the film, they're kind of talking about this relationship the man has, an intimate relationship the man has with the octopus, which kind of creeped me out a little bit. But give it a chance. Oh, just give it a chance. It's an incredible watch, and one that I couldn't recommend highly enough.
Like, are we putting this guy ahead of Paul the Octopus? Remember, hero of World Cup 2010, Rabiot, the psychic octopus, hero of the 2018 World Cup. Octopuses don't have a bad rap. Octopuses are one of the most beloved creatures in the world, especially in the sports sphere. I'm sure most of our audience this morning are massive octopuses fans. So, or what's the plural of octopus fans? So, I don't know what it is. So you've done us a solid here by giving this. So my octopus teacher, definitely worth a watch.
It's Oscar nominated. It is very, very, very good.
Peter Emma has been in touch on YouTube to say, where is Owen's weekly watch of Married at First Sight Australia season 6? This is a joke. It is no longer a joke. I had time over Easter to sit down and binge another bit of season 6 of the Australia version, and once they go on honeymoon it goes to a whole new level. It is absolutely unbelievable stuff. Again, you're talking about an octopus documentary being nominated for an Oscar. If they made a Married at First Sight 20-hour film, it would be nominated for every Oscar under the sun. It is the greatest television show of all time. There's this great line where there's this married couple, obviously, and they're just back from a yacht on their honeymoon. They've known each other for like 4 days, and she's finally beginning to tell his life story. She's talking for about 2 minutes, and he starts to be like, yeah, nice day, isn't it? Like a really harrowing backstory. And he's like, yeah, lovely day. And then he's like talking to the camera being like, oh, I just can't concentrate on her. Then he turns around to her and is like, I'm not your bleeding therapist. And it's just explosion after explosion after explosion. And get the popcorn out. It's the best thing on television. Forget the highbrow Sue Murphy picks. Married at First Sight season 6 Australia is where it's at.
Thanks.
Sue, thanks a million.
Thanks very much.
Sue Murphy with us every Thursday morning here, going through the best things to watch, some of the things you might have missed, and some brilliant suggestions there this week. So My Octopus Teacher was the last one she was talking about. I Know This Much Is True is the Mark Ruffalo show she was talking about, and Them, which is dropping on Amazon Prime this Friday, which seems like it's going to be scary as hell. Right, at 9:36 on this Thursday morning, we have been watching OTB AM, which is live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be talking rugby with Alan Quinlan. Joe will be back on to chat about day one of the Masters. John Duggan will be with us, and there is football with Daniel Harris reacting to tonight's game between Granada and Manchester United. Right now, though, we're bringing you La Rochelle head coach Ronan O'Gara speaking to Joe last night ahead of his side's Champions Cup quarter-final this weekend.
Always great to welcome Ronan O'Gara to the show. How you doing?
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Very well. Are you superstitious?
No.
Okay.
Go on. Why? What's your next question?
Well, look, I mean, for every knockout European game, you talk to me on the Wednesday beforehand so far this year. So, look, if you win again this week, I'm just sowing that seed. You know, you don't want to break a winning habit.
No, I sure do not, and I like your positivity tonight. It's unlike you, actually.
It is, yeah. No, it's true. It's true. Congratulations. That must have felt good.
Yeah, I think there was an overreaction to it big time, I suppose. I think the fact that guys at home maybe and don't see much of the French rugby, unfortunately now, I think when I was playing, we always got it on Thursdays and Sundays on Sky Sports, and it was a good wrap-up of French rugby of the top 14. Obviously Europe is different, but maybe I think because of the bizarre circumstances, people are starved of rugby, and they didn't really know how, I suppose, French clubs are going, and they knew how the national team was going, obviously with the Six Nations. But we got a good night in terms of weather-wise, but we played well at times. We were inaccurate at times, as I said after the game. But as you say, Joe, there was no doubt it was pleasing.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, you'll be happy to hear that on Virgin Media, the free-to-air game this weekend in Ireland is La Rochelle against Sales. So look, if I need to ask some tough questions about the La Rochelle manager, I'll enjoy doing that. Just don't you worry. Knives sharpened. Does he need to go, Matt Williams? These kind of questions. Actually, do you know your interview with Martin Bayfield and Ugo Monye went, like wildfire all over the internet as well. Like, you're no fool. You would understand the power of the media. Do you try and, give the media stuff and be interesting in those moments, and you're aware that, that area of the job can, lead to bigger things, or do you just trust your instincts, or what? Do you have a strategy there?
No, I don't. The one golden rule I have is be honest, because if you try and make up stuff, it'll come back and bite you. So what's in my mind at the time, I can speak openly and freely about, obviously to a certain degree, that you don't hurt any of your players or your management team. But I've seen other people in certain positions in coaching who have I suppose, said stuff that wasn't accurate, and it came back to bite them. So for me, my rule with my players is that if it's a tough message, they prefer a tough message than an inaccurate statement. So that's the big thing for me. I think the more you're honest with them, the more they respect you, even though they mightn't like it in the long term. I think you can sustain a relationship with them.
I know it was interesting you said to the two lads as well, to Ugo and to Martin Bayfield, that you think to yourself sometimes as an out half out there, how would I like things? How would I like the team around me? Do you still kind of see the game a little bit through out half eyes predominantly?
Yeah, I do, because our halfbacks, not necessarily 10, but 9 and 10, because for me they're the two that can shape the game the easiest, because all the kind of most of the decisions, they're in control of the ball, and obviously the eyes outside them for scanning opportunities are super important, but the communication channels kind of start from out to in as opposed to in to out. I think you'll have practiced certain plays during the week that you have a hopefully they will work, and you've previewed the opposing team to defend like this or to attack like this, but there also has to be some amount of adaptability within your plan in case a different picture is thrown at you. So the 9s and 10s, the big thing for me and my, I suppose, coaching philosophy is that there has to be kind of minimum 3 options, and the good guys will pick one of the 3 options. I don't really want them for certain having to pick a certain option, because for me that becomes robotic, and I don't think it becomes sustainable, and I think that's where you lose excitement, especially in an 11-month season in France, where you can't be intense for 11 months, Joe. It just doesn't work like that, and it's a very different model to for even the Champions Cup sprint this year, to the league bases that we're involved in. So I think there's that element of excitement around Champions Cup, and I think that's where we got that probably lift in performance, as opposed to maybe the Bordeaux game was good as well, but the key is to keep that going.
What would you do if you had a player in a pivotal position who kept picking the wrong option if you gave that player the 3 options?
I would talk to myself and take a few deep breaths and but I think it's a good question, but I think that's why you put such an emphasis on preparation, and then I think you can kind of live with yourself afterwards. But if you haven't, I suppose, set your players up to succeed, or you haven't armed them with the right tools to make decisions under pressure, or you haven't created those conditions in training, it's not going to happen on game day for the first time. It's very, very irregular that happens. Great players can do that, and they can come up with their own stuff, but like 80% of the players need guidance and they need direction. But if it's only one option, I think that becomes very limiting.
Yeah. You mentioned something else after that in that interview with the two lads, Ugo Monye and Martin Bayfield. The KBA thing, the Crusaders thing, keep the ball alive thing, and there's that Southern Hemisphere focus on that. And I've heard you say it even in the Virgin Studios over the last while, and here on Off the Ball over the last while, that there's a ruck, more of a ruck focus predominantly in the Northern Hemisphere. I presume, though, given that, Graham Henry, Joe Schmidt talk about the ruck as the heartbeat of the game, and they're two Kiwis, I presume you still do an awful lot of work on the ruck, and you still think the ruck is unbelievably important, or do we overestimate the ruck?
No, you don't, and that's a good point, and it's something that I think you have to talk accurately about, because of the weather conditions in the Northern Hemisphere, and when it's played, an awful lot of the games are on a wet surface. So, it becomes advantage to the defence, because you can kind of tackle the ball as well as the man, and that becomes very hard to control the ball in slippery conditions. The conditions we got at the weekend were summer conditions, which a lot of Super Rugby games are played, and they're also played in a lot more space than the Northern Hemisphere teams give each other. So it's a very, very different sport, in fact, when you compare and contrast European Cup rugby to Super Rugby. It's very, very different, Joe, and I think that cannot be stressed enough. But I think around the ruck, it's, you look at the Irish team under Joe Schmidt and how good they were, and how accurate they were, and how excellent they were at recycling ball. That is exactly what the ruck looks like done well. In my experience as a player or as a coach, I don't have the technical detail to coach it well enough.
Right.
So I lean on obviously John O'Gibbs, and I lean on Roman Carmignani here and Greg Patat to help me in that. But unless you're kind of an expert, you can't own it, and you become a little bit fluffy around it. So for me, I'm trying to get the best around the ruck in that regard, because like there are times when you can't offload the ball and it's not a good option to offload the ball.
Yes.
But there are other times where, depending on the speed you attack with, it may become a viable option to play the ball out of the tackle, which is, I suppose, very Toulouse-ish or very Crusaders-ish. But with the decision-making combined with that is the key point.
It's so interesting as a rugby head coach, more so than so many sports. Like, I couldn't think of a soccer coach saying, well, Jesus, I don't have a clue about that part of the game. Whereas in rugby, you know, you're so reliant on your scrum working. Like, you're praying to God your scrum coach has done his job, or the breakdown. So like, if Joe Schmidt called you up and said, O'Gara, tell me what you know about the breakdown, you wouldn't fancy your chances in that conversation? No,
sorry, I think I have adequate detail, but adequate doesn't cut it at this level, Joe. I think I understand it, but like to coach international players, which most of these guys are, or to coach at the top level and to be an expert or to be a leader in that regard, you need to have a cutting edge over someone else that's coaching it. And I think that's I understand it.
You know, I get
don't
that.
think
So would that manifest, for instance, say at half time of a given game, and the players come in and it's evident to everyone, geez, the opposition have been killing us at the breakdown. Would you be would you know why, or is that where you'd be relying on someone to help?
Yeah, of course you would, but
you
that
would.
Means if you're killing them at the breakdown, it means that you're bringing the ball to ground as well. So depending on, the great thing now is because you get such good stadia and underfoot conditions are really good, so footwork can be done and acceleration can be worked on, and there is an option. It's just you have to make, I suppose, your players aware that sometimes seeking the grass isn't a good idea for quick ball. And some people, unless you build them up in confidence, and you hear it in schoolboys rugby, in the fact that so many of the players playing the game are assigned as just cleaning out at the ruck or carries in the ruck. That can't be enjoyable. If every day of their training week is built up to them having clean outs and very good clean outs, wouldn't it be a great idea if they were actually a carry option before that, and in that pot of three, that, you know what I mean, there's one ball carrier and the two around them adapt.
You talk as well, and this is the last one, it was just from the other night. I just thought it was such an interesting interview, and I thought, well, it's worth expanding on a few of these points you made. You talked as well about putting speed on the ball. This is something you want your team to do, to put speed on the ball. But you said there is a risk with that, which people, I think, can understand. So what jumped out to me was putting speed on the ball and taking risk. I would, and I don't want to do your Munster team a disservice, right? But I would associate your Munster team that you marshalled as, like, amongst many other things, about like a pressure game and, you know, territory and all this stuff. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't get the impression you were talking about getting speed on the ball in the way you're talking about it now with La Rochelle. So have you changed and the way you see the game, or has the game just changed?
No, I think the fundamentals will always be the fundamentals. You know, I can give probably a good example of this. To try, I was on the receiving end of it, and I touched it down under the post, actually, in Bordeaux when Munster beat Toulouse in the semi-final in 2000. And it was a beautiful day, and I think before I received the ball, I think there was 5 offloads. We started to play on the left-hand side on our own 22 with a, you mean, we saw the space, we played to the space, and we kept the ball alive. So you're going back over 20 years there, Joe, and that's where, you mean, that's for me there's nothing different in that period of passage of play than what was played on Friday night. And that's, for me, is the reality of it. I think I like the fact where you try to overspeed it in training, and it's probably something I'm experimenting as a coach with, to see how you can do that. And I watch a lot of football, and I kind of watch Man City, and I'm fascinated with their work without the ball, how they kind of high press, and just how it just feeds into their own energy and their own speed. Then when they're on the ball, that the kind of 40 seconds they've done pressing, I think takes an edge off the team they're playing, and that means that they can play their attack game a little bit easier. So the game has changed in many regards. Yes, I still think that there is a place, no matter how athletic the forwards are nowadays, they still love a little the ball in front of them at times, and chasing the opposition and keeping them in the corner, like England have done for many a season and a successful campaign. But you know, there's so many different options and so many different wrinkles to play, and the reality is that you need you need a lot of tools in your toolbox if you want to be successful.
That's true. And look, that Toulouse game, it was about 30 degrees and it was hot, and you can play that kind of rugby. To be fair to your Munster team, they would have played a lot of winter rugby on lashing rain in Limerick, so you can't be going bananas then.
Yeah. Well, exactly, and I think there's an intelligence with that as well. Yes. You know, in terms of knowing. And you know what I mean? I know for a fact that the Crusaders have a game plan within the game plan, depending on if the heavens open and it becomes pouring rain, that there's just a language that they use, that they're able to flip between one and the other. And I think players like that, because they need direction. It's easy for us in the coaching box or at home watching to go, why don't you do that? But it's hard for someone to come up with an idea against 15 fellas that are trying to dispossess them. I'm sure. And so if you haven't trained it.
Would Crusaders, if the heavens opened, become less likely to take risks?
I wouldn't even use risks. I would say there's a higher likelihood that they'll play smarter, i.e. the kind of ruck to kick ratio would be lower, if you understand me. So you play, if there's beautiful conditions, you may go, okay, if we're not going anywhere after 10 rucks, we might kick.
Okay.
If it's difficult weather conditions, that might be with the Crusaders, because they're probably quite adventurous as it is. It might become 3 or 4.
Okay. So you get a little bit more likely to get rid of it.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's just good sense. That just makes sense.
Sorry, well, you get rid of it.
Oh, sorry, kick intelligently.
Correct, as opposed to get rid of it. You know what I mean? That is probably the counter-attacking in Super Rugby is extraordinarily good.
Yeah, you can't kick loosely.
So getting rid of it is a handy one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We could even get you a job doing that. Close the eyes and peg it down the pitch.
Well, listen, I can kick the thing. So Sale then at the weekend, they're third in the Premiership. They've won 10. They've lost 5. They beat Exeter last month. You know, they're a good team. Alex Sanderson is there now, if people hadn't realised. Obviously, he was very synonymous with Saracens. He talked about facing the La Rochelle Galacticos Stars this week in the press. So he has you down as Galacticos. They put 57 points in Scarlets at the weekend. 57 points to 14. Lots of forward power. AJ McGinty at 10. He scored 32 points. So, I know this is tricky. We won't dwell on this because you can't talk on the radio about the opposition. But broad terms, what are you seeing in Sale?
Yeah, a good team. I think a hungry team. You can see the change in management has worked there. And they play a high pressurised game, and they have multiple threats. So they'll be difficult, but every team at this level is going to be difficult. The great thing about it is that it's an opportunity, and we're gonna go for it.
Yeah, I know you've played them a couple of times in the not too distant past. Are they games that you'll revisit in your mind, or even watch again, or are they ancient history?
No, I haven't, because they're
irrelevant.
They're pre-COVID, and I just think now we're in a kind of a space where it's just, I think with this period of our sporting careers, it's a very, I suppose, surreal period at one level. So I nearly kind of do the analysis of games with empty stadia as opposed to full stadia in terms of trying to analyse, because it is a home game technically for us in a neutral ground, and the reality is we didn't have competitive fixtures at the end of last season. So even though it's in my second season, it feels like it's the first competitive season. And they've had new management, so it's very very new to both parties.
Interestingly, so 8 teams have made it to this stage. 5 of them are French, 1 Irish and 2 English. What we're seeing at national level in France, and so is there a bit of a kind of, it's more than just that? Are we seeing something special happening in French club rugby at the moment? Or is it just, one of those years and hard to explain? Or what's your read on 5 of 8?
No, I think the standard is definitely coming up, Joe. Okay. I think the top 14 is better this year. I think the standard is rising all the time. I suppose a lot of coaching groups are being made more accountable for performance as opposed to home and away before in France, and especially now with COVID and the results going not along expected home results. But like there's some serious firepower in, Racing, Clermont, Toulouse, Bordeaux, and ourselves, and that's then you have other teams like Stade Francais knocking on the door, Montpellier, and you saw Lyon. So it's competitive games every week. But the good thing about it this weekend is it's not a French opposition we're playing, and I know we played Gloucester, but it's nice to change and get into a kind of a sprint mentality of a Champions Cup week.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know you had a look at Munster Toulouse. Toulouse winning 40 points to 33 this game. What did you make of Munster? Where are they? These are the big moments where you judge them. Because like Van Graan can say, well, we've won 16 of 20 games and we're doing lots right. But it's in the knockout stages you really judge where Munster are. So where were they at the weekend?
I thought they were very good. I genuinely did. I've been in that camp. I think that's, as an ex-player watching that, I think it's a good performance, Joe. Right. I think, teams I played on, we had days like that too, where I think you gave it your best shot, but you weren't good enough. I think they'll be disappointed with the fact that they were in control of the game at half-time, and at times they made Toulouse look ordinary, but they didn't do it enough, and then they lost control of the game at critical periods. So and they'd be disappointed, even considering how good the weather conditions were, to give up as many points. That Munster's defence is usually a lot stingier than that, and it doesn't happen. So to score 33 and to give up, what is it, 40, is it? That'll be the bit that'll sting them. But I think, they'll be probably more frustrated with the fact that the week previously Leinster are a brilliant side, but to score 6 points against them would be more disappointing from Munster's point of view, because at least they fired so many shots in the game against Toulouse that I think you can kind of accept that performance mentally.
It's interesting. Rory O'Connor on the back page of the Irish Independent has the story now that the Waratahs are after Stephen Larkham, given Rob Penny's gone there. So we'll have to see how that develops, and Larkham can get out of his contract he has a clause, he can get out if a head coach job like that comes in. So that's brewing in the background. The other thing that was going on this week, I'd be curious for your thoughts on it. A lot of people in the media over here and Munster fans, they looked at the signing of Jason Jenkins, the South African lock, and they didn't like it. They felt that that's Jenkins now coming at lock. They have R.G. Sneeman at lock. They have Jean Klein at lock, and the likes of a Thomas Ahern and a Finian Wycherley waiting in the wings, and they kind of think like just rushing out and buying another South African. And it's nothing against him, by the way. I'm sure he's a good player and all the rest of it. So where are you on like identity? And I know like Dougie Howlett and Tapoka and Maffey and all these guys, I know they played such a role in your era. But your sense of Munster identity at the moment, what do you make of you go out and get Jenkins signing?
It's I think you have to have strong reasons, I think, to sign a third, second row, especially to have, I suppose, so many overseas players in one sector of the engine room. So I think what was dominant in my times playing with them, I think the recruitment was was so well done and so skillfully done and so carefully selected. But now the game becomes more and more professional every year, and opportunities become probably more difficult with signing players. But I think you have to have a big element of trust in this, Joe, on the fact that if the coaching staff who's in charge view that this guy is going to make a big difference, you back it. That's how it works, because it's not them. There's a big responsibility to play local players, but if you feel that you're going to enhance your team by recruiting an overseas player and you're allowed to do it, well then that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
it's hard to comment on something like that, because I don't think we have the full picture or the full scenario, and we don't know. And I certainly don't know from watching games I have to see, like, as you said, we talked earlier in the conversation about like who's a line-out caller, who's a jumping forward, who in the second row, and there's kind of, it's like a combination of who can play with who. So I don't have that detail to give you an answer, but you can see that. If the two young Munster second rows are getting squeezed for game time, and it isn't an overpowering reason, then it'll be difficult questions to answer.
Yeah, and do you? I know, because you've been away for a while now. I don't know. Do you talk to people on the structures behind the scene, like a big picture kind of conversation, and the link up with schools and clubs in the area? There seems to be, depending on who you're listening to, I've listened to Donald Lenihan over the last couple of weeks, or Keith Wood was making the point here on Off the Ball AM, that there is a level of dysfunction behind the scenes at Munster, that your batch came through the clubs and that worked well, but last 10 years it doesn't seem like behind the scenes it is a good picture. Do you have a sense of that, or are you too far removed?
No, I don't.
Okay,
genuinely,
no
I'm out too long, Joe.
No worries.
I don't know, and I don't. I have obviously a few contacts still there, but I haven't heard.
Grant, no, that's fair. You don't have to comment on national radio. Our rugby coverage and Off the Ball is with thanks to Vodafone, official sponsor of the Irish rugby team of us, everyone in. Last one for you. Leinster Exeter at Sandy Park should be interesting. How do you see this one going?
Game.
Yeah, defending champions. We know what Exeter are about. Saw them win it last year. Lots of forward power, to say the least.
Yeah, they've power everywhere. I think same as Leinster. They're the two best teams in it for me.
Are they? Right.
Yeah, I think because you look at what Leinster have done, and you look at their big game appetite and their capacity to deliver, and then Exeter are probably
champions.
The present and the current, are the coming force as well. So you looked at that game against Leon, where started slowly and a lot of teams have panicked, and they made easy work of the Leon team in the end. So it's an absolute incredibly difficult game to call, because there's such quality on both sides that I think it literally comes down to who makes better decisions on the day.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved